Good evening, and welcome to Dark Historian. You're in a quiet place now, made for slow stories, soft thoughts, and peaceful sleep. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let the day gently fade away. Tonight, we'll explore the quieter side of history, simple lives, strange old customs, and forgotten moments that shaped the world in quiet ways. If this calm journey brings you peace or helps you rest, feel free to like or subscribe, only if it feels. Right now, close your eyes, and let's begin. Story 1. The sand-cloaked stillness of Pharaoh, Akhenaten's court, the palace that faced the rising sun. The desert stretches out like a great sigh. No trees, no rivers, only the light soft, thick, and endless spilling over. Pale limestone hills. You are walking on fine sand that powders under your sandals. It's the year 1353 BCE, give or take, and you are entering a city not like the others. This is Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten, a city carved from nothing. At the whim of one man, a man who thought he could remake religion itself, a man who turned his back on the gods of old. The palace rises low and broad, bleached by sun, the walls smoothed and painted in yellow ochre plaster. Unlike the grand temples of Karnak or Thebes, this place doesn't brood or tower. It reclines. It stretches out like a cat, quiet, observing, designed to catch the first light of dawn here. Akhenaten, the so-called heretic king, wakes, not to the cry of priests or the rattling of bronze bells, but to the silence of the sun's first breath. His bed is not luxurious by today's standards. A linen mat, a carved wood frame, and a simple reed pillow. His chamber is scented with myrrh and crushed lotus. In the corner, an ivory box holds his cosmetics. Kohl for the eyes, red ochre for the lips, and scented unguents to soften the desert-dried skin. But before he rises, there is a ritual. Stillness. The priests of Aten do not enter with drums or chanting. Instead, they unroll scrolls in hushed tones, reading poetry that praises the light not Ra, the sun god of generations past, but Aten, the disk itself. The visible sun, shining and singular. You hear the verses whispered against the stucco walls. You rise in the eastern horizon and fill every land with your beauty. Though you are far away, your rays are on earth. You are in my heart, there. Is no temple incense thickening the air? There are no animal sacrifices. Aten does not ask for blood, only praise. A new order. Akhenaten's reign is peculiar. He is not a conqueror. He is not interested in wealth or, not as his forebears were. He is obsessed with clarity, with shapes, with light. The city of Akhenaten, which you now walk through in soft morning, is designed in perfect axial alignment with the sun's path. Each building is placed deliberately. The temples are open-air, no dark sanctuaries, no labyrinthine passages, no secrecy. People move through the city with quiet purpose. Scribes with ink-stained fingers record food tallies in baskets of papyrus. Artisans carry jars of crushed lapis, ready to paint the high walls in blues and golds. Women wear sheer linen gowns and white kohl against the glare. Children run barefoot, their heads shaved except for a single lock curled behind the ear. They all belong to something new. The Pharaoh's appearance. When you finally see Akhenaten, he is not what you expected. His face is long, almost feminine, his hips broad, his eyes heavy-lidded and tilted like almond petals, his chin full, Statues of him were carved this way, not idealized like past kings, but strange, soft, elongated. Some say he was afflicted. Others say it was a symbolic choice to embody both male and female, the whole of creation, just like Aten. After all, Aten has no face, no body, only light. Beside him walks Nefertiti, the great wife. Her silhouette is more familiar tall, regal, poised, but she, too, follows the quiet path of devotion. Her role is not ornamental. She performs rituals. She stands beside the king in equal height in wall carvings. She is not behind, she is beside. As you trail behind them at a respectful distance, you see the royal family stop beneath an open portico. Above them, carved into a lintel, is the image of Aten, a round disc with rays stretching downward like fingers, each holding an ankh, the symbol of life, offering breath to the nostrils of the royal pair. This was the daily worship. No idols, no gold statues, just this, the sun above and its life-giving fingers, reaching silently toward earth. The daily grain in the outer court. Women grind barley by hand, pressing stone against stone in rhythmic motion. You can almost feel the vibrations in your bones. A dull, gritty rasp, steady and hypnotic. The bread made here is coarse, unleavened, often flavored with coriander or figs, but sometimes riddled with sand from the wind, making it rough on the teeth. This is the bread that feeds the city. Even the palace eats it. There is no separate delicacy for King Zat, least not yet. And this is where the lives of pharaohs become quietly disturbing, not in violence or conquest, but in isolation, in the insistence on being divine, yet utterly alone, forgotten music from the temple's outer walls. You hear a faint plucking, strings a harp, its chords fall like threads of honey. Music in Akhetanen is not performed in the temples, but in the private rooms of the palace. No great public fanfare, no drum-thundered processions. It is ... tender, fragile. You imagine the sound drifting upward toward the flat blue sky, unnoticed, unrecorded. The music of a forgotten court. The soundtrack of a king who dared to erase 1,000 years of gods. And yet, outside this city, Ib's Memphis, the old power centers people still whisper the names of Ammon, Osiris, and Horus. Quietly, carefully, they remember. The old gods do not die easily, but here, in Akhetaten, none of their statues stand. The temples have been stripped, the altars broken. Here, there is only Aten and the eerie quiet of a city built not for the people, but for the light. As the sun climbs higher, the palace begins to shimmer. Courtyards grow hot, and the stones glisten with heat. Akhenaten retreats inside, disappearing behind papyrus-draped doors. The city exhales. Shadows retreat into narrow alleys. Cats stretch and vanish into cracks between bricks. You sit under a palm tree imported from the Nile banks and wonder, what happens to a city that forgets its gods? The answer will wait with the wind. Whispers in plaster, an ink asterisk, the day grows older, and the light becomes harsher. You shield your eyes beneath a linen hood as you walk along the eastern wall of Akhenaten's palace. The limestone bleaches nearly white in the noonday sun. It is not a city built for comfort. It is a city built for witness. Every wall tells a story not in sweeping myth or conquest, but in curious detail. There are no battle scenes carved here. Instead, you see the royal family. Always the same arrangement. Akhenaten, Nefertiti, their 6 daughters, and Aten above, its rays stretching down, bestowing the ankhs of breath and life. The figures are often shown mid-motion. One daughter reaches for her mother's earring. Another offers a flower to the king. You notice something tender, something rare in royal depictions of the time: affection. They are kissing, touching, holding hands, and yet the repetition is unnerving. The same images appear again and again, almost as though they are trying to convince someone of something, perhaps themselves. The scribe's chambers down a shaded corridor, its walls painted with faded lotus and duck motifs. You arrive at a room filled with low benches and baskets of scrolls. This is the house of life, where scribes record the breath of the city. They work in silence, except for the soft crunch of reed pens dipped in soot ink and the occasional crackle of drying papyrus. Their fingers are stained black, their postures hunched. They do not write stories, they write inventories. You pass one scribe detailing the delivery of 32 sacks of emmer wheat weighed at sunrise. Another notes the arrival of 6 foreign emissaries. One from Etani bearing lapis, gold, and a carved lion. And thereon a narrow scrappy read something stranger. The priest hesitated at midday. He questioned the rising of Aten. The king was displeased. Silence followed. No name, no punishment, just silence. The scribes do not comment. They record, and so the court remains pristine in official memory. Nothing disturbs the light. The queen's rooms. You slip into a quieter wing of the palace, where the walls curve and the ceilings are painted with stars. Nefertiti's presence lingers like perfume. Her rooms are filled with floral motifs, papyrus reeds, blooming lotus, pomegranate trees. She is no shadow figure. She is corrigent in all but name. Her name is carved beside the king's, sometimes even alone. You examine her mirror, polished, disc of bronze, set in ivory, worn by years of use. A servant girl nearby holds a small alabaster jar and dabs scented oil onto a cloth. Even now, Nefertiti's appearance is carefully curated. Her famous blue crown, tall and cylindrical, is balanced with grace, but beneath the elegance is steel. She commands servants with a look. She inspects grain shipments with quiet severity. There are rumors, were murmured, never written, that she led prayers when Akhenaten fell ill, that she stood alone beneath the Aten, her arms lifted like wings, chanting to a god that demanded only light. The Amarna letters, the edge of the palace complex. You find a chamber filled with foreign tongues. Clay tablets, hundreds of them are, lined in wooden trays, etched in cuneiform, not Egyptian. These are the Amarna letters. They are diplomatic correspondences, baked clay slices of pleading, negotiation, tribute. The great kings of Babylon, Assyria, and the Hittites write to Akhenaten with careful deference, but beneath the formal greetings lies unease. Why have you not sent gold this season, my brother? Our messengers return empty-handed. Do you forget the vow made by your father? The great king of Egypt had become unreliable. He was too preoccupied with theology to maintain the old networks of trade and power. His worship of Aten did not translate across borders. Some letters speak more darkly. There is rebellion in Canaan. We have asked for troops. None arrive. You pause, feeling the dry clay between your fingers. These letters were once carried by hand across deserts and seas. Now they sit here, unread for centuries. Akhenaten's court may have sung to the sun, but the world beyond still turned on grain and steel. The temples without roofs you are drawn, next to the heart of Akhenaten, the great temple of the Aten. It is unlike any temple you've seen or would ever expect from Egypt. There are no shadows here, no sanctuary, no roof. The temple is open to the sky because Aten must always be seen. Every ritual happens in the full blaze of sun. Priests move slowly, heads shaved, barefoot on smooth stone. They do not chant to idols or carry sacred barks. They do not slaughter cattle or smear blood on altars. Instead, they raise offerings of bread, flowers, and incense toward the east. Everything is arranged on long offering tables, rows of loaves, fruit, dried fish, perfumed oils. These are not meant for the god to consume, they are meant to reflect abundance, to show harmony under the sun's gaze. But something about it feels too clean, too empty. You sense that behind the order there is fear, not of Aten, but of failing to honor the one who believes in Aten. Because in Akhenaten, heresy is not punished with thunder. It is erased, quietly. A priest who asks the wrong question disappears from the murals. His name is scraped from the plaster. A temple that falters is never completed. No one speaks of it. This is a city where forgetting is a civic duty, an ordinary death. Toward the end of the day, you follow the scent of linen and natron toward a small chapel near the necropolis. A body has been brought from the River An, elderly court official, unnamed, forgotten. His tomb was not finished. He is not royal, but he is not cast aside. The embalmers are slow, gentle, their hands practiced, but not hurried. They pack the body with salt and wrap it layer by layer in linen. No gold, no amulets, just careful preservation. You ask a nearby servant, barely more than a boy, what this man did. He counted cattle, the boy says, looking toward the hills. For many years, there is no judgment, no mockery, only a soft reverence, because even in the city of the light disk god, someone still needed to count cattle, to weigh bread, to repair sandals. You begin to see. It was not only the theology that made Akhenaten strange, it was the illusion that the divine could replace the mundane. But behind every ray of Aten's light were the silent hands of ordinary people keeping the city from vanishing. And perhaps they knew it would vanish anyway. The sun begins to dip low now, gilding the horizon. You watch as the palace walls deepen to amber, then rose, then a warm shadow grey. Akhenaten will soon pray again, this time facing west, and you wonder, in a world of light, who carries the weight of night? The city that the sand took back Astris evening in Akhenaten does not arrive suddenly. The light fades slowly, delicately, as if even the setting of the sun must be granted permission. You sit now on the ledge of a roof flat, wide, made of sunbaked brick, and the world below hums in the quiet language of dusk. Linen awnings flutter, doves coo. Somewhere far away, a woman sings softly while grinding barley. The song is old, far older than Aten. From up here, you see the city shape, a ribbon of palaces, temples, and storehouses unfurling along the river. The Nile glistens, black and gold. Barges drift past with sails down. Their shadows stretch long dot, and already dust gathers. Sand blows in with the evening wind, settling into corners, sliding between the joints of painted stone. It is slow, patient, but insistent. It will one day take everything back. The daughters fade you. Remember the murals from this morning, the royal daughters offering flowers, leaning on their father's lap, always smiling, always small. But now, as the light changes, so to do the stories. Some of the daughters disappear from later war reliefs. Their names vanish. No tombs are found. No statues survive. Were they sick? Sent away, erased. In one private chapel, you find a wall with rough chisel marks. Someone removed a face. Just one. A girl, previously shown beside Nefertiti, is now gone. Her feet remain, but her name has been hacked away. Why? You run your fingers over the hollow place where her eyes once were. The answer isn't shouted, it is whispered. In this city of absolute devotion, even a child can be remembered incorrectly. The disappearing queen. As you walk again near the central court, something else becomes clear. Nefertiti, who once stood equal beside Akhenaten, begins to vanish from inscriptions too, not suddenly, slowly. Some reliefs show her alone, making offerings. Some depict her as Pharaoh, without Akhenaten at all. Then she, too, becomes a memory in the plaster, scratched, repainted, replaced. Was she cast aside? Did she rule in his place? Did she die? The records do not say. Or rather, they once did. But Akhenaten is a city where answers are not always removed, just worn down until they don't matter. Perhaps she became someone else. Perhaps she ruled under another name. Or perhaps she returned to Thebes, to the temples that still whispered prayers to Ammon in secret. You feel a strange sorrow here, not for her disappearance, but for the silence that followed it, as if no one dared to ask why. The end of a Vision Akhenaten's body was buried once, not in Thebes, not in the Valley of the Kings, but here, in the cliffs east of the city, a royal tomb carved into rose-colored rock, with straight corridors and no traditional decorations, but no mummy was ever found. The tomb was left unfinished. We know that Akhenaten died, but what happened after is a puzzle wrapped in dust. His successors Menkaure, a name barely whispered, ruled only briefly. Then a boy took the throne. A child king, Tutankhaten. But soon, even the boy shed the name of Aten and became Tutankhamun. A return to the old gods, a return to Thebes, to Amen, to darkness and gold. The new king declared Akhenaten abandoned. The statues were broken, the temples emptied, the paintings plastered over, the heretic king forgotten, the city left behind, but it never burned. It was never destroyed in war. There are no signs of siege, no mass graves. Akhenaten simply stopped. People left. Sand crept in. The buildings stood for a while, ghostly in the sun, until the desert wore them down. One gentle gust at a time, and so centuries passed. It wasn't until 1887, over 3,000 years later, that a farmer digging in the dirt unearthed some odd clay tablets, the Amarna letters. Suddenly, a lost city emerged from sleep. Archaeologists came. They brushed dirt from broken stele, puzzled over strange art, and debated what sort of man Akhenaten had been. Madman, mystic, tyrant, reformer. No answer felt complete, because Akhenaten did not live like a pharaoh. He lived like a shadow chasing the sun, and left only faint footprints behind. What remains tonight? The stars above the ruins are bright, cold and brilliant, piercing through the skies, velvet blue. The city below is nothing but ridged mounds and half-buried stone. But if you close your eyes, you can still feel it. The scrape of reed pens, the smell of sesame oil, the silent press of feet on plaster floors. A prayer whispered not to a god of death or rebirth, but to a disk of light, rising each day without fail. You wonder if Akhenaten believed. Truly, that he could change the soul of Egypt, or if he knew, somewhere in his narrow chest, that the sand would win. And yet, for 17 years, he tried. He built a city to hold the sun, and for a brief, quiet time, it did. The city has faded. The light has dimmed. The sand covers all. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 2. Laundry and letters in the Incan highlands. The threads that spoke asterisk, the air is thin here. You feel it as you walk slowly, carefully along the steep path of crushed stone and llama droppings, high above the sacred valley. It is morning in the Incan Empire, and the mountains hum softly with the breath of snowmelt and distant flute song. You are somewhere near the year 1490. The empire is wide, stretching from what is now Ecuador to Chile. But here, in the highlands of Tawantinsuyu, it is still quiet, still full of breath and wool and earth. And it is here, not in the cities of gold or atop mighty citadels, that something curious happens. A woman sits in the shadow of a stone wall. Her feet are bare, her hands are quick, and before her, spread on a wooden frame, is a collection of knotted cords, colored, twisted, dyed, and looped. She is not weaving clothing. She is weaving information. This is a QUIPU, and this woman, though she will leave behind no name you can pronounce, is a keeper of memory. The shape of language, the quipu, is made of spun threads of cotton or alpaca wool, dyed in hues that the sun has long faded, ochres, blues, pale greens, and rust. Some cords hang straight, others twist like dancers caught mid-turn. The knots vary as some single, others in clusters, each placed with care at precise intervals. There are no letters, no parchment, no ink, and yet the quipu speaks. Each knot holds meaning, numbers, tribute records, census data, perhaps even stories. The woman works slowly, checking another bundle of knots as she adds a new one. Her fingers move like a spider spinning a web of memory. She is not illiterate. She is literate in a way the Spanish chroniclers will later fail to understand. You sit near her, feeling the warmth of sun-baked stone on your back, and watch her sort information not by ink, but by fiber. When she ties a loop in pale yellow, she pauses. This may be a village tax, or a record of maize. The placement matters. So does the twist. Even the direction of the spin tells a tale. It is not that the Incas lacked writing, it is that they used a language the earth could hold. The laundry of the empire not far from her weaving place, near a channel of water that gurgles through hand-carved stone canals. Another group of women tends to a quieter art. Laundry. You might imagine it as mundane, and it is. But that is the point. This is the capital's cleansing station, one of many scattered across the empire's heart. And here, the woolen tunics of officials and soldiers are soaked, scrubbed, and dried beneath the sky. The cloth, called is not for fashion, it carries rank. A high official's tunic is not merely clean, it is patterned with authority. White and black checkerboards for military, bright crimson for imperial attendants, pale brown for messengers. And if there's any blood or dirt left on the fabric, it must be scrubbed before the garment is returned. The women use a paste of ground roots, clay, and river foam. Their fingers are red from cold. They hum to keep rhythm, passing the fabric. Hand to hand, squeezing and folding dot cloth in the Inca world is not a background detail. It is currency, status. Tribute. The best cloth is called compeso. Find that even nobles do not wear it unless the Sapa Inca grants it. And so, these women are not merely launderers, they are handlers of empire. Every fold of linen they touch ripples outward, through command, through trade, through ritual. The tallied Rode boy runs past, his sandals kicking up dust. He wears a small bag and carries nothing else. He is one of the Chaskitha messengers of the empire. There are no wheels here, no horses, but there is the Capac Own, the royal road system, 25,000 miles of paved stone stretching like a nervous system across cliffs, coasts, and canyons. Every few miles, a Chosky waits in a small hut. When one runner tires, the next takes the message of carried as a keeper when sprints onward. The message may be a simple tally, or it may be a declaration from the Tsapa Inca himself. There are no written letters to read aloud, only knots to interpret. And yet, every governor, every general, every weaver understands. What cannot be tied into knots is remembered in oral Kipu's phrases, repeated and rehearsed in song and chant, passed from one keeper to another with astonishing accuracy. Memory here is shared, held in community. You sit for a while beneath a sun-bleached arch, watching a messenger disappear into the pale green of the valley. The empire breathes without ink, a soft rule despite its size. The Inca Empire rules less, with iron and more with obligation. There are no prisons, no currency. Instead, there is meta labor tax. Every adult contributes time to the state. One may spend months working on roads, another herding llamas, another hauling stones for a temple, another weaving compe for the Sapa Inca. Even the woman weaving the quipu pays her mita by recording others' service, and this, too, is tracked. In thread, the logic of the empire is built on this quiet mutualism. If the harvest fails, the state opens its storehouses. If a village floods, the state sends builders. There is bureaucracy, yes, but it is warm-handed, textile-based, and communal. You feel a strange peace here. Things are strict, but shared. Clean, but not opulent. There is ritual, but it's folded into life. Even death is organized as the sun begins to lower. Its light catches in the threads of the Kipu woman's lap. She finishes one final knot and ties it gently, like closing a thought. She rolls the cords with care, wraps them in wool, and sets them aside. They will not be read by strangers, but they will be known. Tomorrow she will wash her own tunic, hang it over a stone wall to dry, and begin a new record. And perhaps you wonder how many of our own messages, written in more fragile mediums, will survive this long, or are they already unraveling? The rituals beneath the fabric asterisk night falls like wool, soft, heavy, thick with the scent of burning herbs and damp stone. The highlands do not darken all at once. The last light lingers pink against the cliffs, gold on the peaks before slipping. Behind the jagged line of the Andes, you walk now through the Aklawasi, the house of the chosen women. From outside, it looks like any other stone compound, thick-walled, simple, with a red-tiled roof and a low doorway. But inside, everything smells of chicha crushed flowers and fermented corn. The women here are not priestesses. Not exactly. They are a class chosen as children from across the empire for their beauty, grace, and potential. Some will become wives of nobles. Others will weave compi for the Sapa Inca. A few will be offered as gifts, or as something more, final. But tonight, they are preparing a ritual, not a sacrifice, a blessing. They move quietly through the courtyard, their hands stained with red and yellow dyes. Each prepares a piece of cloth, but not to wear to bury cloth, for the earth the Incas do not worship gods in the way others do. Their deities are mountains, rivers, the moon, the sun. The earth herself is Pachamama, mother of stone and soil, and she must be fed, so the A-class prepare tocapas, small square cloths, each covered in geometric designs. The shapes are not decorative, they are symbolic. A stepped zigzag may represent a sacred hill, a triangle, a star, a grid, the layers of heaven and underworld. The women chant as they fold them. Some are burned in clay bowls with coca leaves and llama fat. Others are buried at the base of terraces before planting begins. The ground is blessed with color and softness. It is hard to say where religion ends and agriculture begins here. Everything is woven together. You kneel beside an older woman as she presses her fingers into a mound of soil and tucks in a rolled cloth, murmuring something that you do not understand but that feels older than the mountains themselves. It is not a prayer, it is a promise. The quiet kitchen's behind the house. There is a kitchen, simple, dark, no grand hearth, just a flat stone surface and a few clay pots balanced on embers. Here, food is prepared not as sustenance, but as a formality. Boiled. Oca tuber, more sour than potato is, seasoned with wild herbs. Maize is ground into sanki, a kind of mash. And always, there is chicha-corn beer, made by chewing the maize to release its sugars, then fermenting it in warm pots for days. Tonight, chicha will be offered in small, shallow bowls, not drunk, but poured. Each dish is arranged on a carved wooden tray, not for a person, but for a presence. You watch a girl of no more than 13 balance the tray on her head and walk it outside. She places it before a smooth rock, slightly darker than the others. This is an awaka, sacred object, or place, or shape. It has no eyes, no limbs, no story, but it is alive. The girl bows, tips the chicha gently to the stone, and whispers, nothing. More, counting the people the next day arrives, cold and clear. Mist lifts like steam from the fields, and you follow a group of officials into a village. Nestled in the slope of a terraced hill, they are conducting a census. It is not what you expect. No paper, no ink, no forms. Instead, the officials carry new quipus, clean, untied. Each cord is blank, ready to absorb numbers, and with them come villagers, farmers, weavers, potters. One by one, they state their households, their llamas, their maize, Aquipakamok, the master of knots, listens carefully and ties each detail into place. It is oddly elegant, a census not of written words, but of touch, spin direction, of tension, of rhythm. Even the knot's height from the top cord conveys meaning. Nothing is arbitrary. One woman explains how many children she has. Another, how many loaves of dried bread she can contribute. A young man says he has nothing to offer. He is sick. The quipu records it all, with no judgment. There are no taxes in coin, only service. And this knot, here the one you watch being tied by calloused fingers, mean that tomorrow the young man's neighbors will bring him food. In the Inca world, data, cares, the stone of time later, that afternoon. You find a boy crouched near a stone wall, running his fingers over a peculiar carving. It is a solstice stone, not a clock, not a calendar, but a tool of shadows. Twice a year, the rising or setting sun will pass through this notch perfectly. On those days, the Quipakumok will note the change in their chords. They will update the knotted records of planting, storing, and feeding. You ask the boy what he's doing. He shrugs, waiting for the shadow to move. The answer is so simple, so complete, that you say nothing more. Sometimes history is shaped not by conquest, but by alignment, as the light begins to fall once more, and the terraces blush with golden light. You find yourself among weavers again. This time, they are laughing. One woman has tangled her loom. Another teases her, calling her fingers slow as a slug. There is joy here, alongside ritual. Play, alongside order. And you realize that beneath the formality of empire is something more ancient, more human. A people who do not separate labor from life. A world where even thread holds memory. And you begin to wonder, when we write, do we also weave? The unraveling empire asterisk, it begins, as many endings do. With a stranger on a horse, the sound is foreign metal against stone, hoof against path. The man wears layers of woven armor, but his chest bears a heavy plate of gleaming steel. He carries no quipu. His words are not shaped for the highland wind. His name is not remembered here. Not yet, but his arrival means the beginning of something the threads have never held before. Silence that spreads. You are standing at the edge of the Capac-owned, the great road as this stranger passes, flanked by men who look tired, sunburned, and ill-fed. Their armor is dented. Their boots are broken, but their eyes are sharp. They do not ask for tribute. They do not ask to count llamas. They ask where the gold is, and the woman beside you, who just yesterday tied knots for a cent. Nothing at all. The unwritten warfare is no battle here, not yet. No trumpets, no armies in formation. The Inca capital, Cusco, still breathes quietly, but change begins in places like this, with rumors, with hesitation, with a quiet shift in the order of ordinary things. The Chasqui, once tireless runners of the road, hesitate to carry messages. Some are intercepted, others are killed. Quipus go missing, or are burned. Some village leaders try to negotiate with the strangers, offering cloth and maize, not knowing that these men want more than food. They want to replace the gods, the sun, even the names, the empire, so massive in stone and thread, begins to unravel not in fire, but in confusion. A cloth for the dead in the Aklawasi. The women have grown quiet. They still make tucapas, but now the patterns are different, darker, older. They do not chant over food anymore. They prepare bundles, instead ceremonial cloth wrapped around dried meats, coca, and feathers. They place them in caves, sealed the entrances with stone. These are coca offerings, gifts to the gods in times of peril. One girl volunteers to be sent higher, to the ice, for a ritual no one explains. She does not cry. She places a red thread around her wrist and walks with her elders into the thin air. There, beneath stars that cut like knives, they build a platform of stone. They pour chicha into the ice, and they sing. The empire once counted everything, but now it grieves in silence. The last knot, a village not far from the coast. An old man continues his work. His fingers tremble, but they still remember. He ties a quipu with care cording, not maize or tribute, but memories, the names of those who have gone. The days the sun seemed to pale, the stranger's first words. He knots not to inform, but to remember. This is not a census, it is a eulogy. When he is finished, he wraps the quipu in wool, ties it tightly, and buries it beneath a fig tree. He does not expect anyone to find it. But if they do, perhaps they will understand. Here lived people who counted not just harvests, but hopes, cloth, and cross. Eventually, the cities fall. The temples are stripped. The Inca is taken, not just the man, but the idea. The sacred lines of thread are dismissed as superstition. Spanish priests call them pagan. Fire consumes bundles of knotted cords once stored in government halls. And yet, not everything disappears. In secret, some quipicamoc continue to tie in households. Grandmothers whisper the meanings of old patterns. A zigzag in a tapestry still holds the story of a mountain. A braid in a child's hair follows the rhythm of a song sung to Pachamama. Cloth becomes resistance. A quiet act of remembering. You walk now through a village where the church bells ring. But in the corner of a home, behind a basket of corn, you see it, a small cord, twisted and colored, tied in a loop, still breathing, echoes in thread today. We do not know everything the keepers said. We have deciphered their numbers, their rhythms, their shapes. But the stories, the whispered messages, the oral histories encoded in color and placement remain mostly silent. Still, you wonder, was the empire truly illiterate? Or did it speak in a language too textured for ink? A language that lived in the fingers, the breath, the community. As the stars return overhead and the mist climbs the valley walls once more, you sit among the ruins of a terrace and press your palm to a stone still warm from the day. You imagine the women washing cloth, the runners passing messages, the elders tying memories into thread. And you wonder, what if nothing was ever forgotten? Only knotted away. The threads fall still. The looms are silent. But the patterns endure. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 3. How to sleep in a samurai's house. Night routines of Edo. Japan curtains of rice paper and silence. Asterisk. You are walking along a stone path under a waning moon. The gravel crunches softly beneath your sandals. A pine tree bends overhead, its needles whispering in a wind so gentle. You cannot feel it, don't hear it. It is the Edo period of Japan, somewhere in the early 18th century. The age of samurai, the warriors of battlefields past, but of paperwork, etiquette, and stillness. The Tokugawa shogunate has brought peace. With it comes routine, precision, politeness, and long hours of quiet. You arrive at the home of a mid-ranking samurai, not a daimyo lord, but not a commoner. His house is modest by European standards, but to him it is a world of order. The gate creaks open. A lantern flickers behind bamboo blinds. No one rushes to greet you. This is not a home of noise. Here, even the walls whisper. The architecture of restraint. The house is built of wood, clay, and tatami. It breathes. The walls are made of shochi wooden lattice frames covered in translucent rice paper. They slide open without a sound. There are no hinges, no slamming doors, no keys. Only the hush of paper moving against wood. Tatami mats line the floor in perfect geometric arrangement. You step with care. No shoes, not even socks. Bare feet, only soft against woven straw. The ceiling is low. You are meant to bow slightly without realizing it. Even the rooms suggest humility. In one corner of the house, there is a small tokonoma, a raised alcove where a scroll hangs beside a single flower in a ceramic vase. The scroll is not decorative, it changes with the season, often bearing a haiku or a Zen ink painting. The flower is selected each morning. Together, they set the tone for the entire house. Tonight's scroll reads, In the stillness of night, the pine's breath, unseen yet near. You are not meant to speak. You are meant to observe. The evening meal the family gathers in quiet. Precision, the samurai, his wife, their 2 children, and an elderly mother who sits with back perfectly straight. The meal is served in jubaka tiered boxes containing rice, grilled fish, pickled radish, and a small bowl of miso. Soup. There is also a square of tamagoyaki, sweet egg rolled tightly. Before eating, they bow their heads and murmur, "Eat it," a phrase that means I humbly receive, acknowledging the life that was taken and the effort that was given. There is little conversation, not because there is no affection, but because the act of eating is sacred. The chopsticks are held precisely, no pointing, no sticking them upright in the rice that resembles funeral rites. Children are corrected with a glance, not scolded, only guided. The food is not lavish, but carefully prepared, seasoned with restraint, balanced for harmony. When the meal ends, another bow, gochisasama dishita, a thank you for the nourishment, to the preparer and to the world. The bowls are wiped, the trays stacked, the floor swept, and the house returns to stillness. Preparing for sleep as night deepens, the household begins its slow transformation. The shoshi are closed, darkening the rooms with soft moon-filtered light. Lanterns are lit oil or candle, placed in glass or paper. Their glow is warm, flickering, fragile. In the back room, the futon is unrolled. Not a permanent bed, but a padded mat stored during the day. It is laid directly on the tatami, topped with a thin quilt. The pillow is often filled with buckwheat husks, not soft, but cool and dry. Each member of the family has a designated space. Children to one side, grandmother near the wall, the couple in the center. The air is cool. The home has no insulation, but that is not discomforted, is a rhythm. The samurai brushes his teeth with a willow twig, rinses his mouth with salted water, and folds his clothes neatly beside him. He wears a thin cotton yukata robe, nothing more. Before lying down, he kneels for a moment before a wooden kamadana household shrine. He bows twice, claps twice, bows again. He offers a silent prayer to the local kami, the ancestral spirits. He does not ask for wealth, or glory, or power. He asks for balance. The sound of paper walls as the family settles in. You become aware of the house's acoustics. It is not silent. You hear the soft creak of the roof as it cools, the shift of fabric as someone turns, the distant croak of a frog outside, the faint pop of an ember dying in the brazier. You hear everything, because paper walls do not block sound. Privacy here is not about silence, it is about courtesy. You do not listen in, and others pretend not to hear. It is a society built on implied boundaries, and in the samurai home, where dignity is everything, those boundaries are sacred. A child stirs. The mother gently hums a lullaby, more than a breath. It is an old song, the kind sung by generations of women whose names are not written down. The father adjusts his futon. He does not snore, or if he does, it is not spoken of. You lie on your mat beneath a woven quilt, and let the darkness wrap around. You like warm ink. There are no clocks, only the steady pulse of night. You begin to drift. The pine tree outside sways, and you wonder, in a world without noise, do dreams echo louder? Morning shadows and measured steps asterisk you awake, not to the sound of alarms or the call of birds, but to light, thin grey-blue dawn slipping through the seams of the shoji. The paper softens the glow, turning it milky, diffused. The air is cool on your face, tatami under your back, the futon still warm from sleep. The house does not leap into motion, it stretches. The grandmother rises first, quietly moving without disturbing the others. She folds her futon with practiced hands and stores it in a cedar-lined cupboard. The bedding must not linger, it absorbs moisture. Leaving it out would be discourteous, improper, unclean. She lights the hibachi, the small charcoal brazier. The scent of ash and warmth begins to fill the room. Soon, the others stir. No one speaks above a whisper. The ritual of cleanliness, the samurai himself begins his morning not with weapons, but with water. He kneels before a small wooden wash basin. A cloth, a ladle, no soap, no splash. He rinses his hands, his face, his mouth. Every movement is slow, intentional. He changes from his sleeping yukata into a plain, well-brushed kimono of indigo-dyed cotton. The sleeves are tied with a simple cord. His hair pulled back into a chonmej topknot is brushed and oiled. Then he sharpens his wakizashi, the short companion blade to his katana, not to use, not for show, but because the blade is part of him. Dullness reflects inward. The sword is polished with tissue, oiled with clove, laid in its stand like a sleeping animal. Only then does he step into the corridor, ready to begin the day. Breakfast without fuss. The morning meal is smaller than the evening one. A bowl of barley rice, a slice of salted daikon, a bit of grilled mackerel from the river market, green tea, bitter and grassy dot. No honey, no meat, no fanfare. The children eat quietly, sitting with knees folded beneath them. The father does not speak unless spoken to. The mother sips her tea with both hands. Steam rises. Time stretches outside. A neighbor sweeps her garden path. You can hear the whisking sound of the broom against stone. A dog barks once, far away, then falls silent again. This is a society arranged around avoiding disruption. Peace is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of restraint. A house of duties after breakfast. The house separates. The samurai leaves for the castle town, where he serves not as a warrior, but as a bureaucrat or clerk in a wooden hall filled with scrolls, seals, and ink. His work is dull, precise, unglamorous, but to him it is duty, and duty is sacred. His wife remains behind. She cleans, not in haste, not to tidy up, but as a form of respect. Totemi is dusted, not swept. Shochi paper is patched with fresh rice paste. Inkstone bowls are rinsed and refilled. The children practice calligraphy, not writing words for their meaning, but for their shape, their balance, their emptiness. A crooked brush means a crooked heart, the grandmother says. Without looking up, you follow the mother to the garden. She kneels beside a stone basin and washes a turnip with her hands. There is no faucet. The water comes from a bamboo spout, fed by a stream behind the house. It drips steadily, sounding like time itself. She turns the turnip in her palms, rinses the dirt away, places it on a clean cloth to dry. That will be dinner. The seasons speak. You begin to notice that everything in the home responds to the seasons. In winter, straw mats are layered with heavier quilts. The brazier is used more often. The grandmother places dried yuzu peel in the bathwater. In summer, the walls are opened to allow wind to pass through. Mosquito nets are hung. Buckwheat noodles replace rice. fans appear woven from reeds. But now, it is early spring. The plum blossoms are just beginning to open. The house smells of wood smoke and something faintly floral. A haiku hangs in the tokonoma. First plum of spring, no one to see it bloom but the night wind. You read it once, twice, and feel its truth. The world here does not shout, it breathes, and you are learning to breathe with it. The path of no disturbance before returning to the study to write letters. The samurai passes through the house with slow, deliberate steps. His footfalls do not echo. He does not disturb the sleeping cat. In the hallway, he does not speak to the servants unless necessary. He simply moves, like a shadow with intention. This is the ideal of the Bushido spirit. Not conquest, not battle, but stillness with purpose. A life so measured that even its smallest actions contain weight. He kneels before a small charcoal burner, pours water into a clay kettle, and begins to prepare tea. Not for guests, for himself, and he waits. You sit beside him, unspeaking, and watch the steam curl into the air like a ghost. In this house of rice paper and silence, you understand the loudest thing is often the unspoken. The day begins to fade once more. Lanterns are not yet lit, but their wicks are trimmed in preparation. A child hums in another room, and you wonder, in a life so carefully composed, what happens when the wind blows too hard. Fading lanterns and the weight of stillness, asterisk, the day exhales. Sunlight fades, not in streaks, but in layers soft grays, folding into soft blue. Inside the samurai house, the rooms cool, the sliding shoji glow faintly with the last of the dusk, like parchment brushed with diluted ink. You are standing by the Ingawa narrow wooden veranda that stretches along the back of the home. It faces a small garden raked with care. The gravel is rippled like water. A single stone lantern stands beside a camellia bush. It has not been lit, not yet, inside. The grandmother murmurs a poem while trimming a candle's wick. When one flame dies, another must bow to light it. A world of hushed decline. The samurai is older now. Years have passed, but little has changed. That is the way of things in this world. Them permanence balanced with careful preservation. His hair is grayer. His hand trembles slightly as he folds his kimono. He still sharpens his sword, though the edge is rarely tested. He has not seen battle. He is unlikely to, but his duty endures. He tends to ledgers in the magistrate's office. He balances rice shipments. He investigates small disputes over property lines and fishing rights. The ink stains on his sleeve are his scars. At night, he walks through the house barefoot, counting each mat silently in his head. There are exactly 36 tatami mats. There have always been 36. It is how he knows the house is still whole. The children. The part the children have grown. One now studies in the castle town. Another was married off last spring. Their rooms remain untouched. Futons are still stored where they once slept. A doll sits in the corner of one room, a silk rabbit with eyes faded from sunlight. The mother does not speak of them often, but at night, as she kneels by the shrine, you hear her whisper their names as she folds her prayer hands. Not loudly, not even clearly. Just breath shaped into memory. You realize that in this house, absence has a shape. It lives in the rhythm of footfalls down an emptier hall. In the single pair of chopsticks, now placed where there used to be two. In the way the rice is cooked, with slightly less water because fewer mouths are eating. Nothing is mourned. Nothing is forgotten. Only ... folded away. The passing of Clotha. Samurai's wife now teaches the art of furoshike cloth, wrapping to neighborhood girls. How to carry tea in a square of silk. How to bundle books. How to fold cloth around a gift so that the corners align with the lines of the season. One girl asks, "Why not use a basket?" The wife smiles, "Because cloth remembers shape. A basket forgets." The house contains dozens of clothsome woven by her mother, some gifted at weddings, some stained by time and careful patchwork. They are not thrown away. Here, even fabric is respected. You run your hand over one-dyed indigo with a crane motif and feel the years in its softness. You wonder how many meals it has wrapped, how many belongings it has carried, how many hands have folded it. It does not speak, but it does not need to. A ceremony for no one on the 15th night of the month. The moon is full. The family prepares a small moon viewing ceremony. It is not for guests. It is not for celebration. It is for rhythm. The mother places sweet dumplings on a lacquer tray. The father arranges pampas grass in a vase near the veranda. The grandmother folds a poem and places it beneath a stone in the garden so the wind does not carry it away. They sit together, without speaking, and watch the moon rise. It glows behind the trees. It reflects on the water basin. It casts soft shadows on the gravel. You sit beside them, unsure whether to speak. But no one does, and so you listen to the moonlight. A sword and a scroll later, that evening. The samurai takes down a wooden box from the shelf. Inside is his katana. He opens it slowly, like a man greeting an old friend. He does not remove the blade. He simply looks at it. Its lacquered sheath, its perfect balance. The craftsmanship, not of war, but of intention. Beside it lies a scrolly load, with age, but well kept. It is not a battle plan or decree. It is a copy of the Hogakure, the Hidden Leaves, a book of samurai wisdom. He reads a passage. Aloud to himself, matters of great concern should be treated lightly. Matters of small concern should be treated seriously. He nods once, not in agreement, but in understanding. Then he returns both sword and scroll to the box and slides it shut. That is his ritual, not for defense, for memory. The last light the grandmother retires early. She blows out her lantern with a soft breath and a hand cupped. Around the flame, the others follow. One by one, the shoji are slid closed, the futons unrolled, the quilts laid smooth, the pillows adjusted. The samurai lies down, eyes open, listening. He does not count his breath. He does not dream of battle. He thinks only of the tea waiting for morning, the rising of steam, the chill of the floor, the turning of the garden leaves. And then, at last, he sleeps. You remain for a moment longer. The candle flickers one final time. A breeze passes through the outer screen. A moth dances, unseen, in the rafters, and you wonder, in a house where nothing is wasted, not even breath, where does memory go? Not written, not shouted, not etched in stone, only held in the stillness of a paper wall. The moonlight fades, the scroll is closed, the lantern is cold. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 4. The Rain That Never Came. Drought Diaries from Ancient Mesopotamia. The day the clay cracked asterisk, you find yourself standing ankle-deep in dust, on the edge of what was once a canal. The sun is sharp, not blazing, not loud, just relentless. This is Mesopotamia, somewhere near Nipper, in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. The year is unknown. Those scribes will later write it as the 4th year of King Shusin's reign, or the 3rd. Records differ. Calendars shift, but the drought is real, and it begins, not with famine or panic, but with something far quieter. The soft cracking of clay. You kneel beside an irrigation trench. The mud walls are drying too fast. The reeds are brittle. A few children dig for frogs in the silt. They find none. You are in a city of scribes, brickmakers, weavers, and priests. There are no banners, no drums, only lists, inventories, tablets, and now all of them begin to mention the same thing. Water is late. The scribe's table in a shaded chamber lined with baskets of scrolls. A scribe wipes his brow with a strip of linen. His fingers are stained with bitumen and ochre. Before him, a lump of clay waits moist. For now, he presses a stylus into its surface, carving slow, cuneiform lines. Barley, 23 shekels light. Cattle, dying near Canal Bend. Rain, not since the 6th moon. He exhales. The clay cracks at the edges. He smears a little water on it and keeps going. This scribe is not a poet, not a prophet, just a clerk. But every tablet he makes will one day be a relic, a warning. Outside his door, a temple boy brings in offerings, dried dates, leeks, a single silver fish, nearly spoiled. The temple must still feed its gods, even if the gods are silent. The fields that whispered farther from the city walls, past rows of crumbling reeds. You follow an old man as he walks barefoot across dry earth. He carries a stick. He wears a linen tunic patched at the knees. His eyes are clouded by dust and time. This land was once flooded every spring. The Tigris would rise, the silt would spread, the barley would drink, and everything would grow. But now, the fields do not murmur, they crackle. He kneels to touch the soil, scoops a handful, lets it fall. It falls as powder. He looks toward the horizon, where the clouds refuse to gather. The gods are not angry, he says. They are just busy. You do not answer, because here, in this ancient world, rain is not only whether it is divine attention, and when it does not come, the silence speaks louder than thunder. The city adjusts back within the walls. Life continues, awkwardly, carefully, hungrily. Women now line up for bread before dawn. The loaves are smaller, coarser, made with wild seed and grain from storage bins, sealed last season. The priests gather atop the ziggurat at dusk, facing the wind, their arms lifted in slow ritual. They chant, but not to one god. There are two. Many, Enlil, who commands the skies, Ea, who watches the water, Ishtar, whose love once brought the storms. The people murmur their names, hoping one will listen. In the market, merchants offer amulets, small clay figures shaped like clouds, with carved eyes and a single blue bead. They say it keeps wells full. It does not. A mother offers one to her daughter anyway. Hope, like water, finds cracks to sink into. The brickmakers problem you wander to the killed district. Here, bricks are born sun-baked or fire-cured, stamped with the king's name and the year of rain. But the bricks are failing. The clay is too dry. It won't hold form. The molds crack. The stamps blur. Workers spit into the mix, trying to keep it moist enough. A foreman mutters, "How can we build walls when the earth won't stay whole?" The irony is not lost. In Mesopotamia, even cities were built on mud. Now, even mud is scarce. The sky refuses that evening. People gather on rooftops, not for stargazing, not for cool air, but for listening. They look to the west, hoping to hear the approach of rain, the hush before a downpour, the faint shuffle of clouds. Instead, there is only wind, warm, bone-dry, carrying nothing but grit. A child coughs, an elder closes her shutters. A dog curls into dust. The ziggurat looms above, still reaching skyward. And you think, what happens when a city that lives by rivers is abandoned by water? You lie down that night on a roof, wrapped in a wool cloak, and stare into the black sky. No moon, no clouds, only stars, bright and sharp. They say the gods ride between them, that dreams are dropped from their chariots like seed. But tonight, even dreams seem brittle. You close your eyes, wondering not what will come, but what will fail to arrive. Offerings to empty skies, asterisk, the morning arrives without dew. You rise with the sun, not that its light is welcome. It glares pale orange through the haze, already hot on your shoulders. The sky is cloudless again, as it has been for weeks. In the temple courtyard, the Inu, or high priest, stirs incense into a clay brazier. The smoke is thick and sweet, a mix of myrrh, juniper, and dried fig leaves. It coils toward the heavens in slow, desperate spirals, but the sky does not blink. The priest begins the morning chants, his voice gravelly from days of smoke and fasting. Around him, the Zhang assistants spread woven mats on the ground. A calf is led forth scrawny, underfed. It stumbles. The crowd watches. They hope that sacrifice will wake the rain god. You stay near the edge, behind a broken pillar, watching the calf bleats once. The priest hesitates just a breath, then finishes the ritual. There is no thunder in reply. The tablet room back in the temple's inner chambers. The scribes are busier than usual, not with sacred texts or poetic hymns, but with ration tallies. One tablet shows the barley supply now reduced by 1/3. Another lists fish caught last moon, fewer than half the year before. A third tablet is already breaking along its edge. The scribe moistens it again with water and spit. Their faces show no panic, only calculation, because this is a city that has learned to survive by knowing. It is not divine wrath that scares them, it is uncertainty. The numbers must be precise. The accounts must be clear. Only then can the gods, or kings, or farmers be satisfied. You lean over a half-dried tablet and read, issued 1 jar sesame oil, 2 bundles onions, 5 loaves stale, given to woman of house of reed, named forgotten. Note, weeped. There is no judgment in the scribe's marks, only a record. Even tears, it seems, must be measured. Dry wells and long walks see you follow a group of young boys carrying jars slung on their backs. They are headed beyond the gates, farther than is normally allowed without a writ. But today, the guards do not stop them. They are going to the last reliable well, almost 2 hours away. It is dug deep into a shaded crevice, where the earth still hides moisture in its lower ribs. By midday, they return jars, heavy backs aching. 2 of the boys have broken sandals. 1 limps from a cracked heel, but none complain. The water they carry is warm, slightly bitter, and smells faintly of sulfur. But it is water, and it is shared in a courtyard near the city's edge. An old man fills a basin with some of it. He washes his face slowly, letting the trickle run down his cheeks. He does not drink. He lets it fall back into the dust. I remember when we bathed twice a week, he says, not bitter, just wistful. Now we pray the dust won't notice us. The rain priests begin to argue in the shaded halls of the ziggurat. A quiet tension builds. The priests who serve Enlil argue with those devoted to Ea. It is not a sky matter, says one. It is a river matter. We should call to the deep. No, it is above. The wind has changed. The heavens must be misaligned. The younger acolytes are sent to recheck omens. The liver of the sacrificed calf, the direction of the smoke, the behavior of birds. A heron flew west at dusk. That must mean something. A frog was found near the outer trench. That must mean something. The truth is, no one knows. But doubt is not permitted in the ziggurat. So they write new hymns, new petitions. They offer gold they cannot replace. They burn incense until the halls smell more like fire than faith. Still, no clouds appear, and outside the people begin to murmur. Perhaps we've praised the wrong gods. The dream of rivers at night. A woman in the weaving quarter begins to dream of water. She tells no one, but she remembers the sound of the Euphrates swelling, the slap of the current against flatboats, the way the river once sang as it curved. Around the city, in her dream, she is young again, standing on the steps of the quay, letting her feet dangle in the cool green water. A fish brushes her ankle. She laughs. When she wakes, her cheeks are damp, but not from the river. It has been too long since a child learnt to swim. Too long since a trader had to wait for a flood to pass. Too long since the gods answered without being asked. A clay seal in the dust near the city's edge. A merchant closes. His store, he has no more oil to sell. No more fish to trade. Only broken amphorae and clay weights, no longer tied to anything of value before leaving. He kneels and presses a small cylinder seal into the dirt just outside his threshold. It bears his name, his lineage, his merchant mark, a lotus beside a scale. He stands, does not look back. The wind scatters dust across the seal almost immediately. By morning, it is gone. That night, you walk the temple steps again. The ziggurat is cold underfoot. The wind tugs at your robe. And you wonder if a people record everything, every loaf, every death, every tear, can they ever truly vanish? Or will the clay remember, long after the gods forget? What the clay remembers, asterisk, it is evening. The market is nearly empty. A single vendor wraps dates in faded cloth. A child chases a dry reed down the alley. A priest lights a flame in the temple that has burned low for days. The drought has not broken, but life, somehow, continues. You pass through the inner gate where records were once checked daily. No one stops you now. The guards sit in the shade, sharpening spears they will never raise. Their eyes follow the wind. This city your Nipper-Sipper, or some other name now worn smooth, was built on a cycle, flood and plant, harvest and storage, praise and sacrifice. Now the cycle has paused, and no one is sure if it will resume. The final rationing, the storerooms beneath the granary. The air is thick with the smell of old grain. The scribes still tally, though their tablets are fewer. One by one, the clay shelves have emptied. Not with panic, not with haste, just steadily. Today, a new tablet is pressed. Final issue, barley, 3 baskets, lentil mash, thinned oil, half jar, shared 2. Families of canal workers note, no further reserves. It is stamped with a dull seal, not the king's, just a clerk's. You watch as the scribe dries it in the sun. He does not look afraid. He looks tired. The priests leave the ziggurat one morning. They simply do not return. Their chambers are cold. The incense bowls are dry. The scrolls remain, but the chant books are gone. No announcement is made. A boy finds a broken votive tablet on the steps, its edges burned. The writing is too melted to read. He gives it to his mother, who uses it to wedge a door closed against the wind. The gods are not gone, but perhaps the priests realized. No amount of smoke or silver could coax rain from sky that had forgotten how to weep. A garden grows quiet in the quarter, once known for its rooftop gardens. A woman tends to a single pot. She pours a cup of water into the cracked soil. Two thin stalks remain. One has a wilted blue mullo curled at the edge. The other is bare. She hums softly while she works. The song is old, perhaps older than the city itself. She does not expect the flower to live. She waters it anyway. When she's done, she sits beside it, not to rest, but to remember, because the city may forget the flood, the market, the ziggurat, but it will remember the flower. A tablet buried near the edge of the ruins. A young girl writes something of her own. Not a tally, not a prayer, just her name, her age, the name of her mother, her favorite kind of bread. She presses it into soft clay, wraps it in linen, and buries it beneath a stone jar behind her house. No one asked her to. No one will find it for thousands of years, but she buries it anyway. It is not about being remembered. It is about marking the moment. You watch her pat the soil flat with both hands. She presses her palm print into the surface, then runs away, laughing softly. The river remains one evening, far later. The rains do come. They are not loud, just a steady whispering, like the sigh of someone returning after a long journey. The wind carries the scent of mud, wet reeds, and distant thunder. No one is left to gather at the temple. No children jump from the canal walls. The river rises, but finds only ghosts. And yet, as the water seeps into the earth, it finds the buried things. Clay tablets, seals, fingerprints, names dot, and the city, long silent, begins to speak again, not in noise, but in impression, because clay remembers what we forget. You stand now on a hill where the city once lived. The wind smells of rain, and you wonder, were the gods ever truly absent, or were they just listening, in silence? The storm has passed. The fields are still. The tablets dry once more. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 5. Walking the market of medieval Timbuktu scribes beneath the acacia asterisk. The sun rises slow over the Sahara. It is not harsh, not yet. The air is cool, the kind that carries last night's stories. It smells of dust, parchment, and crushed date pits. You are in Timbuktu, somewhere between the 13th and 15th centuries. The city's golden age flows quietly around you, as steady as the Niger River nearby. Timbuktu is no palace city. No throne glitters here. No emperor lingers behind ivory screens. But this place holds something rarer. Words, more books than swords. More ink than spears. This is where the desert meets the scholar, and where markets hum not just with grain and salt, but with syllables. The morning unfurls you, walk the sandy path as doors creak open around you. Not doors of oak or bronze, but of woven palm fronds and carved mud-plaster. The houses are cool, thick-walled, made of banco clay. They seem to rise from the ground like thoughts from silence. At the center of one courtyard, a scribe settles beneath an acacia tree. His desk is low, just a board balanced on 2 bricks. He unwraps his tools from cloth: reed, pen, inkpot, parchment. He dips, breathes, begins. The script flows from right to left, Arabic, curved and elegant, traced with deliberate rhythm. He is not copying the Quran today. He is transcribing a letter for a merchant, an invoice for 23 bundles of dyed indigo. Delivered to Jen behind him, a small boy recites verses, not aloud, just beneath his breath, practicing, repeating. Knowledge is light, he whispers, and ignorance, a heavy sleep. The market opens by mid-morning. The market awakens. There is no shouting, no hawkers with raised hands, just a steady murmurer, current of trade that flows around palm mats and low stalls. Salt arrives from the north, in great slabs cut from Taudina's mines. Their edges are white, flaked with earth. Caravans carried them here on camelback, hundreds of miles over dry wind and starlit silence. Gold dust arrives from the south, tied in pouches, sealed with beeswax, weighed in shallow bowls, and books, yes. Books are stacked in baskets and wrapped in goat hide. Some are new, written in Timbuktu itself. Others come from Cairo, Fez, Andalusia. Their subjects range from astronomy to law, from botany to grammar. You pass a man selling medicinal roots, beside a woman copying a legal ruling into her leather-bound notebook. Nearby, a boy exchanges to figs for a worn manuscript about dream interpretation. No one treats the books as sacred, but no one tosses them lightly. They are touched with care, passed with reverence, the scent of ink and sand in a shaded corner. You find the copyist guild, a loose circle of scholars, merchants, and apprentices seated cross-legged on mats. They do not talk, they transcribe. Ink is mixed in small ceramic bowls, burnt acacia bark, ground gum, soot from lamp smoke. It smells sharp, like something pulled from beneath a fire. The parchment is smoothed with river stones. Every wrinkle is a distraction, every blemish a failure. They write in Ajami, a local African language written with Arabic script. Sometimes they switch to classical Arabic. Occasionally, they annotate in Tamash. They are not trying to be understood by outsiders, only by one another. One scholar passes you a page and points, a diagram of stars. The Pleiades, beneath it, a line of text. When they vanish, the rains come. You nod, though you are not sure you understand. He nods back. That is enough. The salt man's legionnaire, the well. You meet the salt merchant. His face is lined like the dunes. His robe is simple, white as chalk. He does not speak much, but he carries a scroll tucked into his belt, a ledger. He shows it to you. Each transaction is recorded by hand, not in ink, but in charcoal and sand rub. The pages are worn, the script uneven, but the numbers are clear. 2 slabs salt, 1 henna. Basket, 1 hour's negotiation. He smiles at that last line. You ask who wrote it. My daughter, he says. She wants to be a scribe. He tucks the scroll away and moves to weigh his next trade. You realize then, knowledge is not kept in stone towers or sealed temples. Here, it travels on backs and breath. Midday, quiet as the sun climbs. The city slows. Shutters close. Stalls pause. The market thins. A stillness settles like dust. You find shade beside the Sanka Mosquit's minaret, built not with stone, but with memory. The mud bricks are scored with wood beams that jut out like steps for birds. The building is warm, textured, full of stories. Inside, there are no pews, just mats, shelves, and silence. A scholar sits in the far corner, wrapped in indigo robes. His fingers trace the edge of a manuscript that is older than he is, perhaps older than the mosque. He does not open it, he simply rests his hand there, as though holding something that might dissolve if uncovered too soon. The call to prayer echoes softly through the alleys. People rise, wash, pray, then return to their books, their ledgers, their baskets of salt, not because they are forced to, but because this city has learned that the smallest routine is sacred. You lie back in the shade, feet tucked beneath you, head against cool clay. The market quiets for now, and you wonder, in a city built on sand, is it ink that keeps it whole? Ink-stained fingers and camel-skin books asterisk the sun has shifted now. The heat that once pulsed off the ground begins to soften. The air tastes faintly of chalk and wood smoke. A breeze dry and blessed stirs across rooftops. Merchants are just there. Wares. Women unwrap baskets of dried hibiscus and tamarind pulp. The afternoon returns, but for some, the day never paused. The scribes are still writing. You walk past one man whose fingers are entirely black with ink. He wears no rings, no ornaments. Only a simple turban and a pouch of crushed charcoal at his hip. His mouth moves silently as he writes not prayer, not muttering, just rhythm. Soundless syllables to guide his hand. He is copying a legal ruling dated 5 years prior, about the division of an orchard between two cousins, a matter so small, yet worth preserving. That's how Timbuktu survives, not by grand monuments, but by treating even ordinary things as worthy of record. A scholar's halcyon invited into a scholar's home, quietly, without fuss. A boy gestures from the door, and you follow him into a cool, dark room lined with bundles of books. The walls are earthen, the shelves crooked. The air smells like cedar oil and aged leather. Here lives a mu'allima, teacher of law, astronomy, and logic. He's an old man with a voice like sand on cloth. He greets you with a nod and offers you a seat on a reed mat beside a pile of texts. These, he says, brushing his hand over the stack, are my brothers. You begin to read the titles on the calculations of stars over the Sahel legal. Disputes in trade caravans, the ethics of lending and saltage is written in Arabic, though the margins hold annotations in Songhai and Fulford. The texts do not lecture. They conversaled arguments in ink, side comments in the margins, students adding thoughts in smaller script. It is a library, but it breathes like a dialogue. He pulls one volume from the pile, wrapped in camel leather, and unties its strap. Inside is a treatise on rainfall patterns over 5 generations. We do not write to impress the caliphs, he says. We write to outlive the wind. The couriers of knowledge outside the city walls. The road hums again with camel bells. Another caravan arrives, salt and cloth, yes, but also books. Some are traded, some gifted, others commissioned. The couriers wear robes caked with red sand and travel on memorized stars. They carry wrapped manuscripts in leather satchels, strapped against the sun, tied with wool cords dyed deep blue. Each book has passed through hundreds of hands. Each hand added something, a comment, a correction, a stain, a thumb smudge in the margin. You can track a book's journey by the fingerprints left behind. These aren't tomes for display, they are companions. A scholar meets the caravan leader and kneels to inspect a new arrival, a worn volume of Al-Ghazali's Reflections. He kisses the cover, not because the book is sacred, but because it survived, and that is sacred enough. The grammar of trade you wander back into the market square, now warmer in tone, quieter in pace. Two merchants are in debate, not shouting, not bargaining, discussing language. It is not dirham, it is dirham. If we are in Songhai, one says, but in Arabic script, it is always dirham. See here, the other opens a folded note. A child listens intently nearby, scribbling the words on a scrap of palm leaf. Even money here is linguistic. A single miswritten consonant might change a contract. So merchants must be, in their own way, linguists. They pass not just coin but comprehension. The memory of dusters the sun lowers. You find yourself near the edge of town, where houses give way to dune. There is a grave here, a small one, no name. Just a broken plank bearing faded script. A man kneels before it with a book balanced on his knee. He reads not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. It is a text about rainwater. Collection in the high plains. Practical, quiet, likely written by someone long forgotten. When he finishes, he closes the book, places it gently on the grave, and bows. You ask if the grave belongs to the book's author. No, he says, but it belonged to someone who read it once. The return to Inkes, you walk back into the city. The call to prayer rises again. Evening approaches. In one corner of the market, an apprentice mixes new ink, grinding soot and water in a shallow dish. She stirs with a bone spoon, testing the thickness, watching the swirl. Her hands are steady, her brow furrowed. Her master leans close and says, "Ink must be dark enough to remember, thin enough to forgive." You look down at your hands, still stained with dust and the scent of dried pages, and you realize that in Timbuktu, everything is annotated. A brick wall carries a poet's name. A bowl of dates is named after the tree it fell from. Even the wind, here, has footnotes. You settle beneath a tree as dusk deepens, and the market draws breath. You do not need to speak. The city is already writing. The pages that outlived King's asterisk night in Timbuktu arrives on velvet feet. There is no clang of gates, no extinguishing of torches, just a gentle dimming as lanterns are lit behind mud plaster walls, and the stars begin to bloom above the city like distant glyphs. You are sitting in the open-air courtyard of a scholar's home. The walls curve in quiet warmth around you. A small lamp flickers nearby, fed with oil pressed from dates. The air smells of dust and ink and last prayers. It is a good time to read. A family of pages you are joined by a woman named Isatu. Her hair is wrapped in indigo cloth, and her hands are calloused from work farming, teaching, writing. She carries no title, but she carries knowledge. She unwraps a cloth bundle and lays it out. Inside are 4 books. One is bound in goat hide. One is stitched at the spine with thread dyed in crushed tamarind. One is unbound just pages wrapped in linen. And one is to warn to open fully. These, she says softly, were my grandfather's. She does not explain what they contain. She begins reading aloud. The script is fluid, warm. It does not rush. Her voice smooths across the parchment like wind over dunes. You recognize some words. Others elude you, but it does not matter. The tone is the meaning. She pauses, fingers resting on a line, and smiles. He copied this under candlelight. He spilled tea here, see, and there it is. A faded blot, shaped like a raindrop. You wonder, how many stories were born not in palaces, but in spills and stains. The hidden libraries, after a time, you're led by candle to another home, then another dot. Each seems quiet from the outside, unremarkable, just rooms built from sand and time. But inside, behind simple wooden shutters and beneath bundles of millet, lie books, dozens, sometimes hundreds, hidden, preserved, loved, wrapped in cloth, tucked into niches, protected not by royal guards, but by grandmothers. We kept them during invasions, one man says. We copied them when the pages broke. You ask why? Because forgetting, he says, is a kind of death. These are not libraries for scholars alone. They are libraries for inheritance. A book about healing herbs lies beside a birth record. A guide to camel training rests on a shelf with Quranic commentary. The margins hold notes from grandchildren in Timbuktu. Libraries were never just collections. They were conversations across time. The scholar who wrote The Wind in One Dim Home Near the Market Wall. You hear a name repeated. Ahmad Baba. He lived generations ago. A scholar of law and language. A defender of Timbuktu's autonomy. A lover of books so fierce. They say he wept more for the library burned than the house lost beside it. His writings still live, quoted by teachers, copied by hand, stored beneath sleeping mats. One boy recites a line from memory. The ink of a scholar is more sacred than the blood of a martyr. You do not know if he believes it, but he says it with care, and here, that may be enough. A city sleeps, in books as night deepens, the market empties fully. Lanterns are doused. Books are wrapped again in cloth. You see a scribe roll up his mat, tuck his tools into a pouch, and bow once to the shelf beside him. Not to worship, just respect another man, closing his stall. Pauses to touch a worn folio with his fingertips before blowing out his lamp. A girl reads to her brother by starlight. Her voice skips and stumbles, but he listens without correction. And you begin to understand. Timbuktu does not protect its knowledge. It lives in it. What remains centuries from now? Many of these books will disappear. Some to fire, some to fire, some to theft, but many will survive, hidden in caves, wrapped in goatskin, smuggled in boxes labeled tea, found by those who remember what they meant not just for scholarship, but for being. And they will tell stories of sold caravans, of ink mixed in clay bowls, of a city where grandmothers hid poems in their roof beams, because history here was never carved into stone. It was whispered, and it listened back. You lie now beneath an open sky, the stars vast and slow. Somewhere a scribe finishes a final line. A lamp flickers out. A page curls inward, and you wonder, when cities fall, do their stories rise? Not as shouts, but as footnotes in the wind. The night deepens, the books are still, but the ink never dries. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Good evening, and welcome to Sleepless Historian. Asterisk. You're in a quiet place now, made for slow stories, soft thoughts, and peaceful sleep. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let the day gently fade away. Tonight, we'll explore the quieter side of history, simple lives, strange old customs, and forgotten moments that shaped the world in quiet ways. If this calm journey brings you peace or helps you rest, feel free to like or subscribe, only if it feels right. Now close your eyes, and let's begin. Asterisk. Story 1. King John of England, the sulking tyrant of marshland early shadows, John's childhood, loneliness, and inherited insecurity, the night stretches over the English countryside like a heavy velvet cloak. Soft hooves whisper across a muddy track. You're drifting through a misty wood, the moon filtered by branches that creak ever so slightly with the wind. It's the 12th century, quiet and dim. Inside a cold stone keep, a boy curls beneath a fur blanket, while voices echo down distant corridors. This boy's name is John, and one day he'll be known as Lachlan. You might think that all kings are born with majesty stamped upon their swaddling cloth, but John was the youngest of 5 brothers, born in 1166 into the crowded, fractious household of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. His older brothers Henry, the young king, Richard the Lionheart, Geoffrey of Britain stood like looming pillars of strength, each with lands to inherit, armies to lead, destinies already unfolding. But not John. John had no lands, no title, no grand expectations. He was quite literally the spare, the extra, the one left to wander the echoing halls after the others had departed to war or court. His nickname, Lachlan, wasn't just a cruel jest, it was an administrative reality. His father, Henry II, ruled over a sprawling Angevin empire that stretched from Scotland to the Pyrenees. But there were no duchies or provinces left for young John to inherit. He belonged to a royal world that had no clear place for him, and yet, this boy watched everything. He observed his father's restless pacing, the short bursts of anger that crackled like lightning in the king's chambers. He listened from behind. Doors as his mother, Eleanor, plotted with her older sons against the king. John's childhood was no cozy hearth. It was a stage for cold ambition. A childhood of quiet corners. You can almost see him now, boy of small stature, with reddish hair, moving quietly between the chapel and the armory. He's often alone. There's an older monk who teaches him Latin by candlelight, a nurse who tells him Norman fairy stories in a whisper, but mostly, John is surrounded by people who are not quite sure what to do with him. He is too highborn to ignore, yet too low in the pecking order to matter. When his older brothers rebelled against their father's swords drawn, alliances with the French king trembling in their hands, John remained behind, a child pawn kept close by his father. At one point, the aging Henry II sent John on a mission to Ireland. The year was 1185. John was just 18, and the Irish trip was meant to groom him for leadership. It did not go well. When he landed, John reportedly laughed at the bearded Irish chieftain's unwise diplomatic move. He tried to assert authority, but instead sparked tension and scorn. After only a few months, he returned to England in failure. From this experience, John learned something. Not how to lead, but how easily things could go wrong when you didn't hold the cards. And more importantly, how little mercy the world gave to those who faltered. Family feuds and silent watchfulness. You find yourself now walking down a long, drafty corridor. A servant's candle flickers ahead. In one room, Eleanor of Aquitaine is imprisoned by her husband for inciting rebellion. In another, Richard, later to become Lionheart, is sharpening a sword, preparing to claim his inheritance. John lingers by the edges of these power struggles, absorbing every betrayal and shift in loyalty. He begins to understand that trust is a fragile thing. His father uses him against his mother. His mother, in turn, encourages his older brothers to cast John aside. The family is a constellation of kings, queens, and lords' brilliant stars, held together by thin threads of blood, snapping at the first tug of ambition. And John survives by being pliant, observant. He doesn't yet have a crown, but he is learning how to weave a web. He reads charters slowly, noticing the way seals can be used to delay or obscure. He memorizes feast arrangements and remembers who sat where and why. These are not thrilling lessons of battlefield glory, but they are lessons in control. In the quiet hours, when candles burn low and the castle stills into a hush, John lies. Awake, sometimes he writes little notes to himself. Sometimes he dreams of land not grand campaigns, or glory but simply a piece of ground that is his. Somewhere he is not just a guest, a young man in a growing shadow by the time John reaches his 20s. His older brothers are thinning in number. Geoffrey of Brittany dies in a jousting accident. Henry the young king perishes from dysentery after years of conflict. That leaves only Richard the charismatic, golden-haired warrior who would become the stuff of ballads and statues. When Henry II finally dies worn down by years of fighting his own children, is Richard who takes the throne. John is once again left behind. Richard, though, has no interest in ruling England. He spends most of his reign abroad, fighting in the Crusades and defending territories in France. This absence gives John a window. He is placed in charge of certain aspects of governance, trusted just enough to manage, but not enough to rule it. Is in this in-between space that John becomes dangerous. He is no longer a child. He's learned that those who wait too long are forgotten. That patience, while a virtue, is rarely rewarded in royal courts. When Richard is captured and imprisoned on his return from the Crusades, John sees his chance. He declares himself king, writes letters of command, tries to seize castles, but the nobles, many of whom still favor Richard, refuse to fully back him. John's premature grab for power earns him a reputation for betrayal. And Richard, when released, does not forget. But John survives again. He weathers the humiliation, just as he always has. He apologizes, retreats, waits, and when Richard dies, childless in 1199, it is John who finally claims the crown. Now imagine this moment. You're sitting in the great hall of Winchester. The tapestries barely stir. A new king is being crowned, but the ceremony feels unsure, hushed, as if the throne itself is wondering whether this is truly the right man. John is no warrior king, no legend forged in fire. He's the last son, the watcher, the one who waited, and now the weight of a fractured kingdom rests on his narrow, mistrustful shoulders. And so we pause here, with the crown finally upon John's brow. But what would he do with it? Would he rise to the moment or sink into the marshy misrule that history remembers? Misrule in the marsh, taxes, treason, and the unmaking of a crown. The crown is heavy. You can almost feel it there resting crookedly on the brow of a man who waited too long for it. King John begins his reign in 1199, not with thunder or triumph, but with a subtle tightening of control. He walks softly through corridors once haunted by his father's fury and brother's shadow. He is king at last, ... And yet the kingdom itself seems to recoil just slightly. England in this era is not merely England, it is the heart of a vast network, the Angevin Empire, Normandy, Anjou, Aquitaine, all French territories under English control. But they are restive, slippery, suspicious of John, and the nobles and these lands' proud lords with tangled loyalties do not love this new king. John, perhaps sensing this, turns to what he knows best, administration. But his version of governance is cold, suspicious, and quietly relentless. He raises taxes, not all at once, but through a steady stream of fees, fines, and forced loans. The Scrivener King picture, John not in a suit of armor, but hunched over parchment. He's more clerk than crusader. He prefers scrolls to swords, ink to blood. And he uses these tools with precision. He imposes scutegia payment in lieu of military service on his barons, then increases it, then does so again. He demands aid, tallage, and relief from nobles and townsfolk alike. He revives old forest laws, charging peasants for gathering wood or hunting deer in a quiet hamlet. You might imagine a farmer awakening to the news that his ox has been seized for failure to pay a fee invented only last spring. There are no grand pronouncements, just small, accumulating miseries. The kind that erode loyalty, not with drama, but with weariness. And yet, John does not stop. He needs money, always more. For wars he is not winning. For castles he is not keeping. He fights to maintain his territories in France, but his grasp loosens. In 1204, Normandy is lost to King Philip of France. It is a blow that echoes through England like a cold wind. Nobles who held lands on both sides of the Channel must now choose loyalty or livelihood. John responds not with compromise, but with suspicion. He begins to see enemies in every corner. A kingdom-watched the king builds a vast network of spies and informants. He sends letters sealed with wax, filled with instructions to watch, report, punish. His justiciars, sheriffs, and clerks carry his will to the far edges of the realm in Nottinghamshire. A local lord is imprisoned for delay in paying homage. In Sussex, a manor is seized for ambiguous loyalty. The ricozzo. There are so many ricozzo, a king who governs with a lawyer's cruelty. He writes letters, close, not open declarations, but private commands. He changes sheriffs frequently, fearing that familiarity breeds disobedience. He requires hostages from noble families' sons, sent to court, not as guests, but as collateral. There is a deep unease in the air. Not the chaos of war, but the slower dread of rule without trust. You can imagine the feeling. A door creaks open at night in a manor house. A courier has arrived. A scroll is read. The family learns they owe another fee, or that their son will not be returning, or that the king will visit, and that they must host him at great cost and under great scrutiny. Treason and tragedy. John's paranoia, like moss on old stone, spreads slowly and thickly. In 1203, he arrests and starves to death a noblewoman, Matilda de Braus, and her son. Their offense: her husband had once owed John money and spoken too freely. Later, another name darkens his reign: Arthur of Brittany. Arthur was the son of John's deceased brother Geoffrey, and a potential claimant to the throne. In 1202, John captures the boy in battle. The next year, Arthur vanishes. The whispers say John killed him, perhaps with his own hands, in a drunken rage. Others say he ordered it and looked away. Either way, the result is the same. A child disappears, and a king's reputation rots further. The nobles begin to mutter, not openly, not yet, but they remember, and they tally every small cruelty. The quiet rebellion of paper and stone by 1210. John's mistrustful grip has reached every corner. He extends his hand into the affairs of the church, refusing to accept Pope Innocent III's choice for Archbishop of Canterbury. The Pope retaliates by placing England under an interdict. Churches are closed. Bells fall silent. Mass is not said. For ordinary folk, this is not just a spiritual blow, it is eerie. Sundays without hymns, deaths without burial rites, Life begins to feel ... unblessed ... Eventually, John is excommunicated. A king not only unloved, but now spiritually cast out. Still, he does not relent. He builds castles, huge, angular, unwelcoming ones like Corf and Odiam. Less for defense, more for control. He travels constantly, with a train of officials and chests of silver. He rarely sleeps in the same place twice. Perhaps he is trying to stay ahead of ghosts, those of Arthur, Matilda, his dead brothers, taxation, and tears. In 1214, John makes one last gamble. He raises more money, so much that some towns collapse under the burden, and mounts a campaign to retake lost French lands. It fails. The Battle of Bouvines is a disaster. His allies retreat. His name is tarnished in foreign courts. Back home, the barons, those weary, taxed, disrespected barons, begin to gather. They no longer write requests. They form pacts. They polish swords. It is here, in this gathering storm, that John begins to understand the limits of fear. Now the countryside hums with quiet discontent. Nobles whisper together in candlelit halls. Letters travel swiftly across the downs. There are meetings in abbeys and glances exchanged in royal courts. And King John, once the youngest son, once the watcher, now finds himself surrounded by a kingdom that sees him not as a king, but as a burden. We'll leave him there for now, in a world of gathering clouds and parchment rebellions. But next, we'll walk with him into the marshy fields of Runnymede and watch as ink changes history. The wet end swampy retreats, Magna Carta, and a final feast of peaches. You find yourself now standing beside a slow, winding river. The reeds shiver softly in the breeze. The ground beneath your feet is damped, more marsh than meadow. There's a hush to this place, a sort of tired stillness. The year is 1215. The place is Runnymede, and the man awaiting his barons is King John. He's older now, weathered, his face lined, not from age alone, but from constant suspicion and restless nights. His court has grown thin, his alliances scattered. But today, the nobility have not come to rebel, not entirely. They have come with demands. Demands written in the form of a charter, a long parchment scroll, stiff with ink and clauses. The Magna Carta, a charter of grievances. Let the document unroll before you like a scroll of soft thunder. Clause by clause, it reads like a tally of John's failures. It limits his power. It promises fair trials. It curbs arbitrary taxation. It places even the king beneath the law. John does not sign it joyfully. He signs it because he must. There is no roaring crowd, no triumphant declaration, just ink on parchment, a few nods, and a slow dissolving of the gathering. But the ripples of this act will reach centuries forward. For the moment, however, John sees it only as a humiliation, a temporary concession. Breaking the word almost immediately, John sends envoys to Rome. He pleads with the Pope to annul the charter. Pope Innocent III obliges, declaring the Magna Carta void, an insult to royal authority. The barons, unsurprisingly, do not agree. Civil war follows. The First Barons' War. Castles are besieged. Loyalties fracture. The French Prince Louis is even invited by the barons to take the English throne. John, always moving, flits across the landscape, retreating, regrouping. His support ebbs and flows like the tides of the Thames. And yet, even in the midst of war, John is still ... John, still tracking his coffers, still issuing writs, still punishing and pardoning in equal measure. he never becomes the warrior king his brother was, nor the scholar his father longed to be. He becomes something else, entirely a weary administrator in armor. The washes and the treasure in 1216. Fate turns soggier. John's army is moving across the marshlands of East Anglia. In the region known as the Warsha Vast, muddy estuary his baggage train attempts a crossing during low tide. But the waters rise unexpectedly. Wagons sink, horses flail, men vanish, and with them, John's royal treasury gilded relics, jewels, coin-filled chests all swallowed by the sucking mud. It's an ignoble moment, and one that seems to crush the last remaining illusion of control. John escapes, but diminished physically, financially, and spiritually. A final retreat, not long. After, in the chill of autumn, John takes refuge in Newark Castle. He is sick, some say with dysentery. Others whisper of a chill caught during one of his endless travels. His condition worsens quickly. He loses his appetite, then his strength, and yet true to form he asks for peaches. A bowl of them is prepared, steeped in rich wine, it is said. That these peaches were his last meal. One can imagine him thin, trembling lips stained with juice, and wine staring into the candlelit distance, perhaps remembering a time when he was just a boy, watching his family from the corner of the hall, a king who was never supposed to be king, a child who once dreamed only of owning land. And now, in this cold chamber, those dreams are dust. He dies on the night of October 18th, 1216. He is around 49 years old. Aftermath, and Ecos's body is wrapped and taken to Worcester Cathedral. There is no great fanfare, no weeping crowds, just the slow toll of bells and the shuffling of monks. His son, a young boy named Henry, will inherit the crown, and with it the broken pieces of John's kingdom. But the Charter Magna Carta will, live on though annulled, it will be reissued by the regents of Henry III. Trimmed and reshaped, yes, but still present. A heartbeat beneath future parliaments and courts. A soft insistence that rulers are not above the law. It becomes, in time, the bedrock of constitutional governance. But John, he remains a cautionary tale. Not a monster, not entirely, but a man of insecurity, pettiness, and deep loneliness. A reflection in still water, and so we leave him, King John, the Watcher, the Taxer, the last son. He ruled not with brilliance or bravery, but with suspicion and scrolls. His reign was not a blaze, it was a slow, sodden smoulder, marshy and meandering. But in that wet soil, something strange happened. From his failures grew ideas of liberty, of fairness, of limits to power. In his terrible kingship, there lay the roots of something enduring. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 2. Charles VI of France, the mad king who thought he was glass asterisk, and now, let's drift into a new corner of forgotten history, ... A land of chivalric, pageantry, and flickering torches. A court where laughter turned into whispers, and a king wandered halls in padded garments, convinced his body might crack like porcelain. Welcome to France, in the waning days of the 14th century. Asterisk, the golden boy of Valois coronation, splendor, and the first Châteauret begins with celebration, drums, and banners, brocaded horses, and girls tossing petals into the wind. Paris is full of life. Bells toll in peal after peal. A boy, just 11 years old, is declared king. His name is Charles, son of Charles V. Heir to a fragile throne, it is the year 1380. The the 100 Years' War is still in its long, weary course. The plague haunts the shadows. But today, there is only joy. Charles VI, as he will come to be known, is crowned in Reims, the same stone cathedral where Clovis, the first Christian king of the Franks, was baptized. The boy is dressed in robes far too large for his shoulders. The flirtatious shimmer in the sunlight. The scent of melted wax and rosewater drifts through the pews. He is called Charles the Well-Beloved. For now, youth and regency, a court of uncles and gold ewe, might imagine Charles at 14 tall for his age. Bright-eyed, he loves games, music, and hawking. His hair is the color of fine straw. The court surrounds him with jewels and jesters, but it is not he who rules. For the early years, governance is left to his uncles, powerful dukes of Burgundy, Anjou, Berry, and Bourbon. They are wealthy, ambitious men, and they are not fond of restraint. The royal treasury is opened like a sweet jar. Gold pours out in lavish grants, flamboyant banquets, and ceremonial retinues. It is a court of silks and whispers, of art commissions and quiet bribes. France groans beneath the weight. War with England drags on. Taxation increases. The people of Paris riot, then retreat into hunger. But inside the palaces, there is laughter and minstrelsy. And young Charles, he watches and grows, becoming king, hope, reclaimed in 1388. At the age of 20, Charles declares himself ready to rule. He removes his uncles from power and restores his father's old counselors, the Marmousets, men of reason, diligence, and frugality. For a time, the kingdom breathes easier. He enacts reforms, favors the poor, ends unnecessary wars. There is talk that France might recover. He is thoughtful, polite, given to long walks and quiet reading. People speak again of Charles the Well-Beloved, but something is shifting in the corners of his mind. A heat, a sound, and a break. The first clear crack in his sanity comes in the summer of 1309. To Charles is traveling through a forest near Le Mans. The sun is high, the air heavy with the scent of pine sap and horse sweat. He is on a military expedition, riding with lords and guards. The road is narrow, bordered by tall trees. Suddenly, a figure bursts from the woods, a barefoot man, wide-eyed, screaming that the king is betrayed. The guards seize the man, but the damage is done. Something inside Charles fractures. Moments later, one of his own squires drops a lance. The clatter is sharp. Charles spins in the saddle. His eyes are wild. He draws his sword and attacks. Not the enemy, but his own retinue. He slashes. At night, shouts incoherently. For men die before he is restrained. He collapses, unconscious, sweating. When he awakes, he does not remember. The court is stunned. The physicians prescribe leeches and prayers. The church speaks of demonic possession. For a time, Charles recovers, but something within him has been disturbed. Return of the glass. King, what follows is a series of episodes, more alarming and more tragic. Charles begins to suffer from what physicians of the time call la folie intermittent madness. At times he is lucid, gentle, even joyful. Other times he forgets his own name. He flees from his wife, unable to recognize her. He smashes furniture in sudden fury. He forgets he is king. He howls like a wolf. He refuses to bathe and, most famously, he believes he is made of glass. We'll pause here, with Charles adrift between sanity and shadow, convinced that even the softest touch might shatter him. In our next section, we'll explore the world of the glass. delusion, and the eerie measures taken to protect a monarch from himself. The glass delusion, madness in silk robes, the torches flicker low in the corridors of the Hotel St. Paul. Servants move in silence, their slippers whispering against the cold stones. Somewhere, behind a set of carved wooden doors, a king paces slowly, step deliberate, guarded. You hear the rustle of stiff linen. You notice the absence of armor, of the usual clink and creak of royal movement. Charles VI is wearing padded clothing layers upon layers of velvet and quilted cloth, not for fashion, not for warmth, but for protection. You see, Charles believes his body is made of glass, not metaphorically, not as a courtly flourish, but truly terrifyingly fragile. He fears that the slightest touch, a stumble, even a bow, from a courtier might shatter him into shards. This is the glass delusion, a rare but once documented psychological condition that haunted Europe for centuries, particularly among the educated and noble, and Charles is its most famous sufferer. Living in a fragile world, imagine it now. A king who refuses to be touched, who flinches when a dog brushes past, who orders iron rods sewn into his garments so his limbs won't snap. In the royal apartments, furniture is moved further apart to allow wide, careful steps. Doors are opened, slowly in case the sound startles him. Even the servants stop bowing too deeply for fear that the movement might unsettle the king. His physicians, mystified, apply all the treatments they know: bleeding, herbal tinctures, long recitations of scripture. But nothing cures the belief. The court caught between fear and etiquette adjusts. They host feasts with hushed music. Entertainers arrive, but perform slowly, softly, never too near. Messengers speak in low voices. No one raises a hand suddenly in Charles's presence. Even joy, it seems, must walk on tiptoe. A mind like Wax Charles's episodes come and go. Sometimes he is lucid. He smiles, plays chess, strokes the heads of his children. He kisses his wife, Queen Isabeau of Bavaria, and thanks her for her patience. Other times, he sits for hours staring into the hearth, whispering fragments of Latin. He mistakes his courtiers for strangers. He forgets the names of his sons. He once ran, barefoot and shrieking, through the palace gardens, convinced he was being hunted by demons made of ice. Another time, he stood in the chapel for hours, insisting that the altar candles were speaking to him, but always. When the glass sphere returns, the household holds its breath. The madness of power, this is not the madness of cruelty. Charles is not a tyrant. His illness is quieter, more haunting. It reveals itself in delays, indecision, and strange absences, and yet the implications are vast. France, already fraying from war with England and feudal infighting, now lacks consistent leadership. When Charles is well, his policies are measured and fair. But when he is unwell weeks or months at a time, the kingdom is ruled in his name by others. His wife, Isabeau, and his brother, Louis, Duke of Orleans, begin to act as regents. But their relationship grows, complicated. Rumors swirl of affairs, of private meetings late into the night, of ambitions that extend beyond mere stewardship. Meanwhile, Charles's uncles, still powerful dukes, resent their loss of influence. They whisper that Isabeau manipulates the king, that Orleans seeks to usurp the crown. The court becomes a chessboard. You can imagine the atmosphere: long corridors lined with silent guards, tapestries muffling conversation, courtiers who watch each other's expressions with studied calm, The palace becomes a chessboard of factions, Orleanists versus Burgundians. Both claim to protect the king. Both use his illness as justification for control. One day, a law is passed. The next, reversed. Tax decrees are issued, then quietly annulled. Entire regions shift their loyalties based on whispers from the palace. And Charles, he walks softly among it, or sometimes lucid, sometimes lost, clutching a rosary or a book of psalms, his robes rustling like leaves in the breeze. He never abdicates. He is never deposed. He simply ... continues. A monarch suspended between presence and absence. The masks of ceremony, there are portraits from this time, striking in their restraint. Charles VI, seated stiffly, hands folded, face pale, his eyes up, intelligent, yet distant. His crown sits neatly, but there's a tension in his shoulders, as if he's afraid the weight might crack something inside him. And all around him, life continues. Ambassadors still come to court, treaties are still signed, banquets still unfold. But behind every ceremony, there is a quiet question: who, truly, is ruling France? The answer changes day by day. We'll leave him now, standing in the candlelight, robed like a saint. Looking through a window he fears might reflect too closely. In our next section, we'll step beyond the palace walls and into the chaos that followed. A regency torn by betrayal, a kingdom splintered like broken glass. Shadows at court, regency, betrayal, and a kingdom splintered. The palace is quiet. The fire in the hearth burns low. Somewhere beyond the thick velvet drapes, Paris trembles not from war, not from plague, but from the slow disintegration. Of leadership, it is now the early 1400s. Charles VI remains king. But France is breaking. A regency without Center Charles's bouts of illness continue. Sometimes months pass in quiet clarity. He speaks with his council, holds audiences, signs decrees. But just as often, he disappears within himself. His absences are not announced. They are ... understood. His eyes go distant. He speaks less. He paces more. Sometimes he forgets where he is. In these gaps of silence, the court does what it must. Governs, bargains, plots. Queen Isabeau and Louis, Duke of Orleans, continue to rule in the king's name. Their alliance is both necessary and scandalous. While the nature of their relationship remains murky, the optics are undeniable. The Burgundian faction, headed by John the Fearless, son of the late Duke of Burgundy, begins to stir. They accuse Isabeau and Orleans of misusing royal funds, of corruption, of steering France into ruin, while Charles lives in padded robes, clinging to the idea that he might break. And so, the kingdom already battered by decades of war with England now finds itself spiraling into civil strife. Murder in the Snit happens suddenly. November 1407, a quiet night in Paris. Snow has begun to fall in soft, hush-covered flurries. Louis of Orleans, returning from a visit to Queen Isabeau, rides through a narrow street, just steps from the Hotel Barbette. A group of masked men surrounds him. Knives flash. Moments later, the Duke lies dead in the snow. The assassins do not. Flee far. They were sent by John the Fearless, and John, far from denying the crime openly, justifies it. He claims he acted for the good of France, to save the realm from the poison of misrule, to end the corruption that filled the void left by the king's madness. His supporters call it a tyrannicide, and many nod in silence. Civil war by candlelight France in the following years becomes a place of divided loyalties, of towns choosing sides not by creed, but by whose banner casts a longer shadow at dawn. Burgundians versus Armagnacs, named for Bernard of Armagnac, father-in-law to the slain Orleans heir. It is a civil war, but an oddly slow one. Skirmishes punctuated by long periods of icy diplomacy, assassinations, raids, mercenary uprisings, a court so divided that even the king's children are split between factions. All the while, Charles remains in his chambers, sometimes lucid, often not. In one moment of clarity, he weeps for his murdered brother. In another, he claims to have never known him. He no longer commands armies. He no longer reads treaties. He paints. Yes, Charles takes up a brush. He makes small, detailed illustrations in the margins of prayer books. Delicate birds, flowering, vines, holy men in muted blues. It is said he finds calm therein, the loops of ink, the slow rhythm of colour. The English return as France tears itself apart. England watches and waits. In 1415, Henry V crosses the Channel with an army. He lands at Harfleur, then marches inland at Agincourt. He wins a devastating victory. French nobility, once the proud bearers of tournament, banners and silk-lined helms, fall in droves to the muddy, bloody field. The humiliation stings, and still, Charles is king, but he does not ride out. He does not lead. He does not protest. He simply remains. A treaty, a crown, a tragedy. By 1420, a deal is struck. The Treaty of Troy. It is an agreement born of despair. Queen Isabeau, still governing in her husband's name, agrees that Henry V of England will become heir to the French throne, disinheriting her own son, the Dauphin Charles. The logic is cold. The Armagnacs are weakened. The Burgundians are ascendant. The king is not expected to recover. Better, perhaps, to preserve France under a strong hand, Evan, an English one, than to allow it to tear itself apart. Charles VI signs the treaty. Or, rather, a trembling hand guides his across the parchment. Whether he understands what he has done is unclear. Final days of the glass King Charles lives until 1422. He dies quietly in the Hotel Saint-Paul, the same palace where he once danced at banquets, where he once wept beside velvet hangings, where he once tiptoed, believing he might shatter. He was 53. He had ruled for over 40 years, and yet it is difficult to call it a reign. It was a long twilight, a candle flickering behind stained glass, never extinguished, but never strong enough to light the room. He left behind a country divided, a legacy of fragility, a kingdom that would take decades to mend, and yet, something about his story endures. Perhaps it is the humanity of it. A man trying to be king when his own mind was a palace of cracking mirrors, a court trying to carry on in whispered steps, a nation that had to learn how to rule in the absence of its ruler. And so we leave the court of Charles VI, dimly lit and lined with glass. The candles gutter, the tapestries sigh in the winter draught. Somewhere, far away, the bells of Rheims toll, once more for a crown that now rests uneasy on another brow. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 3. Ivan the Terrible, the Tsar with a whispering bell asterisk. And now, dear listener, let us drift eastward, into the cold corridors of Moscow. Picture domes like onions against a pale sky, the scent of tallow candles, the hush of snow-covered courtyards, a boy with too much power, and nowhere to put his grief. Welcome to Russia, in the time of Ivan IV later, known as Ivan the Terrible. Asterisk. The boy alone. Wolves in the Kremlin. The snow falls gently over the high towers of the Kremlin. In a silent room, lit by a single oil lamp, a child curls into a fur-lined corner. Outside, bells toll for morning prayers. But inside, there is no warmth, no lullaby. Only a silence that stretches far too long for one so young. This boy is Ivan. He is 3 years old, and he is now Grand Prince of Moscow, an orphan with a throne his. Father, Vasily III, has died of blood poisoning after an arrow wound turned gangrenous. His mother, Alina Glinskaya, becomes regent, clever, capable, and guarded. She rules with care, trying to protect her son from the factions that stalk the Russian court. But in 1538, when Ivan is only 8, she is poisoned most likely by nobles, and just like that, the boy is alone. He lives among wolves now, not the kind that howl in forests but men in fur coats who smile with their teeth. Boyars, Russian aristocrats, jostling for power, seizing lands, and ignoring the child they are meant to serve. Ivan watches from darkened corridors. He sees dogs fed better than servants. He hears his name used like a coin traded in rumors and alliances. He learns early that fear is the only currency that lasts. Sometimes he is forgotten entirely, left hungry or cold. At night, he whispers prayers, not for comfort, but for control. Childhood cruelty and the seeds of tyranny, you can almost feel the chill of that palace air. See the worn linen of the boy's sleeping gown. Hear the scratch of rats beneath the floorboards. There is no one to tuck him in. No kind tutor with stories of saints instead. Ivan finds solace in books, religious texts, chronicles of saints, and grim tales of divine judgment. He reads of fire and wrath, of sinners punished with plague and famine. He begins to believe that he, too, is chosen, not to rule, but to avenge. By age 13, he lashes out. He orders the arrest and execution of Prince Andrei Shuatsky, one of the powerful boyars who had controlled him for years. It is a shocking move. The boy is no longer a pawn. He is becoming something else. The ceremony of coronation in 1547, at the age of 16. Ivan stages a coronation unlike any seen in Russian history. He does not simply declare himself Grand Prince. Of Moscow, he takes the title of Caesara, derivative of Caesar, an emperor, not a prince, a ruler not just of land, but of souls. The church supports him, the people rejoice. There is talk of a divine mandate, of a third Rome, of Moscow rising as the true heir of Christian authority. For the first time, Russia has a Tsar, and yet, in his private chambers, Ivan remains haunted. He hears whispers in the palace walls. He paces alone, muttering prayers and suspicions. His nights are sleepless. His fears dash constant dot still. For a brief time, he rules well. He marries Anastasia Romanovna, a gentle noblewoman whose presence calms him. He enacts legal reforms, centralizes power, codifies laws, even holds public meetings with peasants to hear their grievances. The people call him Ivan the Good, but such peace cannot hold. The fire of Moscow in the summer of 1547. Moscow burns. The city's wooden homes catch flame with terrifying speed. The fire lasts days. Thousands die. Riots break out. And in the smoke's aftermath, rumors rise, blaming the Tsar's maternal relatives, the Glinskys, for bringing misfortune and dark magic to the court. Ivan's grief becomes fury. His childhood, loneliness boils into something darker. He orders executions, public and merciless. He begins to question everyone, including himself. That winter, Anastasia falls ill. The healers are unsure. The symptoms are strange, perhaps plague. Ivan watches her fade with growing dread. When she dies in 1560, something inside him breaks. The quiet child becomes a roaring tyrant. We leave Ivan here, walking barefoot across cold stone floors, listening for betrayal in every corner. In our next section, we'll follow him deeper into a reign of dark robes and darker riders into the terrifying quiet of the Oprichniki. Crowns, shadows, and Oprichniki. Pale winter fog clings to the rooftops of Moscow. Church bells toll in the distance, their echo bouncing off the domes and courtyards. But inside the Tsar's private chambers, there is no sound, only stillness. Ivan sits alone. He has not smiled since Anastasia died. He has not slept through a single night, and soon he will no longer trust a single soul in the entire empire. A kingdom of suspicions it is 1564. Ivan has ruled for nearly 2 decades. He has weathered wars, fires, and famine. He has centralized power, but his paranoia now deepens into obsession. He believes the Bojars, the noble families, have poisoned his beloved wife. He believes they are plotting to overthrow him, to dismantle his reforms, to erase him, and so he does something extraordinary. He abdicates. Briefly, he flees Moscow, leaving behind letters that accuse the nobles and clergy of betrayal. The city panics. The people beg him to return, and he does on one condition. He will return as Tsar. Yes, but only with absolute power. No boyars, no councils, no interference. What he creates in that moment is something new, something dreadful. The Oprichnina. What was the Oprichnina? Imagine a kingdom divided. One half remains governed in the traditional way, by nobles and local administrators. The other half, the Oprichnines, ruled directly by Ivan, personally, as his private state, his secret empire, and to maintain this strange realm, he creates an order of enforcers, the Oprichniki. They ride black horses, wear black robes, and hang dogs' heads from their saddles, symbolizing their role to sniff out treason and tear it apart. They carry broomsticks too, to sweep clean the realm of disloyalty. They are monks in dress, executioners indeed. They answer to no one but Ivan. A silent reign of fear. The Oprichniki ride through the snow in silence. When they arrive at a village, the people flee indoors. Doors are bolted, windows shuttered. They seize nobles from their homes, confiscate land, conduct interrogations, sometimes in icy bathhouses where steam conceals screams. The accused are rarely guilty. Often they are simply in the way. Whole families vanish. Estates are divided among the Oprichniki. Wealth flows into Ivan's private coffers. No trial, no mercy, no warning, just silence, then the thunder of hooves. The bell that whispered one story speaks of a bell hung in the square of Novgorod. It tolled to summon the people when Ivan arrived. But this bell, the story goes, had a personality. It seemed to whisper to Ivan warnings, names, secrets. Ivan believed it. He listened to the bell's imagined voice and acted on its counsel. When Novgorod, a proud and independent city, was accused of conspiring with Lithuania, Ivan rode there with his Oprichniki in 1570. For 5 weeks, the city was sealed. Its streets turned into canals of frozen blood. Thousands were executed, monasteries looted, children drowned in the Volkhov River, all based on the whisperings of a bell, and a man who trusted no one else. The madness deepens during this time. Ivan becomes increasingly unhinged. He shifts between long, sleepless fasts and sudden rages. He confesses to priests, then kills the same men days later. He speaks to icons, claims visions, issues laws written in almost nonsensical prose. He writes letters to princes in Europe, eloquent, educated letters, declaring himself a just ruler. But within his borders, he behaves like a ghost with a crown. The oprichniki, meanwhile, grow rich and reckless. They hold grotesque feasts. They ride mock processions dressed as monks, chanting hymns while carrying out executions, all while the real church watches, powerless, an empire in decline while Ivan rules through terror. Russia's real enemies gather strength. The Livonian War started by Ivan, in hopes of seizing Baltic territory, drains the treasury. The Crimean Tatars raid southern towns. The Operakanina's policies, focused on fear rather than growth, hollow out the economy. Fields go unplanted, roads fall into disrepair. Trade slows, people flee into the forests, forming wandering bands of refugees, beggars, and thieves. Yet Ivan refuses to relent. When anyone priest, advisor, noble counsels moderation, he accuses them of treachery. A slow, frozen Benu might imagine him now, seated in a tall, red-bricked chamber within the Kremlin. The windows are shuttered against the winter wind. The hearth flickers low. He holds a cup of bitter kavors in one hand and a scroll in the other. His beard is long, unkempt. His eyes twitch slightly. He murmurs names under his breath, some of them real, some ... outside. His black-robed riders saddle their horses for yet another midnight visit. Inside, Ivan speaks to the icons on the wall, begging them to reveal who might betray him next. We leave him here, cloaked in paranoia, surrounded by silence that feels too loud. In our next section, we'll meet him in his final years, older, more brittle and more haunted than ever before. A quiet throne and the death of an empire's soul-time has passed. The sharp thunder of the oprichniki has faded into a low murmur. The empire they ruled through fear is now quiet to quiet. It is the 1580s. Ivan IV is older. His black beard is streaked with grey. His voice is thin, his movements slow, and yet, even in decline, he remains dangerous. Russia itself feels brittle, like something that has been held too tightly. A court of Ashista oprichniki, once Ivan's shadow army, have been dissolved, officially, but their absence is less a cleansing than a withdrawal. The fear remains. The courtiers speak softly. No one argues. No one laughs. Those who might have ruled wisely have vanished, some into graves, others into distant monasteries. Ivan's government is now a pale echo of its former self. Erratic, reactive, exhausted. The economy stutters. Trade with the West has slowed. The Livonian War drags on, expensive and aimless. Food is scarce. Famine creeps across the countryside, and still the Tsar sits on his throne. Grief, again and again loss, continues to shape Ivan's world. His beloved son, also named Ivan, becomes one of the few people who still dares to speak candidly with him. Strong, intelligent, and devout, the young Ivan is everything the Tsar hoped for in an heir. But in November 1581, a tragedy occurs. Accounts vary. but the scene is quietly horrifying. In a fit of rage, perhaps over a matter as small as courtly, Dresevon strikes his pregnant daughter and his son confronts him. Angry words escalate. Ivan lashes out again. This time, it is not a servant or a boyard. It is his own son. A blow to the temple. A gasp. Then silence. The Tsar realizes what he has done. Witnesses claim he cradled the dying young man in his arms, weeping, screaming, begging forgiveness from God and from the boy who would no longer rise. The image of the Tsar, bent over his fallen heirs, one that remains carved into history, a king, surrounded by blood and gold, sobbing over the last thread of love he ever had. A hollow end with his heir dead. Ivan grows quieter. His days are filled with strange rituals. He examines relics, sorts through jewels, writes long, rambling letters to foreign monarchs, sometimes poetic, sometimes delusional. He is increasingly obsessed with alchemy, astronomy, secrets hidden in scripture. He consults magicians and monks, searching for signs. His body deteriorates. He suffers from gout, ulcers, trembling. He can barely walk, yet he insists on playing chess every day. In March of 1584, during one such game, he collapses. A moment of stillness. A long breath in, then dash nothing. Ivan the Terrible is dead. What remained behind? He is buried in the Cathedral of the Archangel in Moscow. The ceremony is solemn, but there is no weeping in the streets. Only relief. He leaves behind a broken court, a fragile state, and a feeble heir, his second son, Fyodor, who is gentle but unfit to rule. The Rurik dynasty, centuries old, will soon end. The time of troubles approaches. Years of famine, civil war, impostors, and foreign invasion. The seed of that chaos. It was planted by Ivan. A reign begun in fire, drowned in blood, and finished in silence. And yet, even now, Ivan remains a puzzle. Was he evil, or simply afraid? Was he mad from the start, or driven mad by childhood, grief, and isolation? He was the first to call himself Tsar. He gave Russia a centralized identity, but he also tore out the roots of stability to plant his own name in their place. In time, stories of his wrath became legends, his name a warning, his throne empty, but never forgotten. So now we step away from the icy halls of the Kremlin. The echoes of boots fade behind us. Snow falls again, covering the steps of riders long gone. A bell tolls once, softly, and is still. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 4. Queen Ranavalona, Eye of Madagascar, the loneliness of iron rule, asterisk, and now. Let's travel far from the frozen stones of Moscow to the island of Madagascar. The 19th century is unfolding. Steamships arrive on foreign shores. Missionaries carry books in strange tongues, and empires reach out like vines. But in the highlands of Madagascar, one queen stands in fierce defiance, steady and unshaken. Asterisk, a servant's daughter, a king's wife. Picture a morning on the central plateau. The mist is still rising from the rice fields. Smoke curls from earthen hearths. Children run between wooden homes thatched with raffia leaves, their laughter distant and soft. Here, in the lush hills of the Marina Kingdom, before it became modern, Madagascar, a girl is born around 1778. She is not royal, not noble. Her father is a mere commoner, a member of the servant class. But destiny, in this part of the world, often moves silently through the trees, and it watches her. a secret and a future. Her name is Ramavo. When she is still a child, her father uncovers a plot to assassinate Prince Andrian and Poinerina, man poised to unify the Marina people and ascend as king. Instead of keeping quiet, her father alerts the prince, helping to foil the plan. The prince is grateful, and more than that, he is shrewd to secure loyalty. He promises the man something no coin can buy, a place in the royal future. He declares that Ramavo will one day marry his son. This child, from the serving class, will be queen. It is a promise that echoes quietly across the years into the palace. Grows up watching the court from the margins. She learns how people speak in half sentences, how loyalty is performed with the back bowed just so, how silence in the palace often means survival. When she comes of age, she marries Prince Radama I, heir to the newly unified kingdom. He is ambitious, curious, and fascinated by Europe. He brings missionaries to the island, encourages the reading of Roman letters, allows Christianity to spread. He wears French-style tunics and encourages trade. Ramavo, now called Ranavalona, watches this all with measured stillness. She smiles. She listens. She does not speak often. She has no children. She is one wife among many, but her presence lingers in every corridor she walks. The king's death in 1828. King Radamari dies. Sudden, mysterious. There are whispers of poisoning, of nighttime. Herbs slipped into honeyed drinks. Whatever the truth, Ranavalona acts with astonishing speed. She allies with key military leaders and the traditional priesthood. She gains the loyalty of the royal court's slave army, and within days, she moves to secure power. There is no direct heir. The boy Radama had named as successor is seized. Some say he is strangled, others say drowned. But what is certain, Ranavalona becomes queen of Madagascar, a common-born woman, a widow without children, a monarch with no equal. Her coronation is unlike anything seen before. She mounts the royal platform in the traditional red lamber cloak of nobility and holds high the ancient royal talisman, the samp. She declares that she alone will speak for the ancestors, that no foreign god, no foreign tongue will overtake the land. The people cheer, but some do so with trembling hearts. They do not yet know that this queen, quiet and composed, will rule for more than 3 decades, that she will become one of the most feared and misunderstood monarchs in African history, a different kind. Of strength. Ranavalona is not cruel in the way European kings were cruel. She does not torture for spectacle. She does not boast of her strength. Instead, her power is quiet. She restores Fomba, the traditional customs. She speaks with diviners, listens to ancestral signs. She strengthens slavery, viewing it as part of Marina identity. She abolishes Christianity, not because she hates it, but because she sees it as foreign. The land, she says, must remain its own. She does not scream this, she whispers it, like a mother correcting a wayward child. We pause here with newly crowned, a servant's daughter, now sovereign, a woman alone, seated on a throne carved from forest wood, holding a kingdom in her gaze. In the next section, we'll walk beside her as she shuts the gates of her realm and watches the world from behind the walls she builds. The queen who closed the gates is a still morning in Antananarivo. The palace walls rise above the capital, their stone edges softened by the damp highland air. From the royal veranda, you can see the mist parting over rice paddies and steep, terraced hills. Wooden homes smoke gently, cooking rice and roots. Inside the palace, Queen Ranavalona sits beside a woven mat. She holds a bowl of fermented rice water. She drinks slowly. Today, she will outlaw the reading of the Christian Bible. Tomorrow, she will have 3 missionaries exiled. Next week, she will reinstate an old trial by ordeal involving boiling water and river stones. Her methods are old, but her mind is sharp. She is not mad, she is defending something. A kingdom under siege from Ranavalona's perspective. Madagascar is under constant threat. Foreign ships linger near the coast. British officers bring books, medical tools, and quiet offers of protection. French traders build alliances with coastal chiefs. Christian missionaries arrive with schools and catechisms, claiming to civilize, but also to convert. The Queen sees these men not as benefactors, but as harbingers of ERASURE. To her, they are not only teaching new languages, but quietly removing the old. And so, Ranavalona closes the ports. Not all at once, but gradually. Trade with England and France is restricted. Foreign visitors must now seek approval. Missionaries are watched. Their Malagasy converts even more so. The Queen's spies, wrapped in simple cloth, unnoticed, walk the streets. They listen for foreign prayers, for songs about Bethlehem, for whispers of salvation. And when they hear them, the Queen hears them. To dot the Fomba Restauradra Novena revives Fomba, the sacred customs of the Marina people. The ancestors must be honored, the diviners consulted, the sacred rites preserved. Christianity, she believes, interferes with this. It tells children not to bow to ancestors. It tells wives to defy traditional roles. It offers an afterlife without the rituals of the tombs to her. That is not religion. That is desecration. And so, laws are passed. Church services are banned. Bible possession is punished. Baptisms, if discovered, may be punished by death. Not because of spite, but because of preservation. This is a queen who believes her people are being undone by the gentlest forms of conquest. And her response is not gentle. Trial by Tanginato enforce her laws. Ranavalona does not use dungeons or inquisitors. She uses tangina, a poisonous nut boiled, then fed to the accused. The test is simple. Swallow the tangina, then swallow 3 pieces of chicken skin. If you vomit the skin, you are innocent. If not, you are guilty. It is a sacred tradition believed to reveal the will of the ancestors. But under Ranavalona's reign, it becomes ... frequent by some. Accounts tens of thousands are subjected to the ordeal. Many die. Missionaries in exile write home of tyranny, of persecution, of martyrs. But the Queen does not care how she is remembered in England. She cares how she is remembered in the hills of Imerina, the builders and the boundaries despite the oppression. Ranavalona's reign is not barren. She commissions aqueducts, improves irrigation, sends engineers, often trained by Europeans before their exile, to build stone reservoirs and fortifications. Madagascar becomes more self-sufficient than ever before. The Queen also maintains a large army. Thousands of soldiers march in red uniforms, trained with muskets. They are loyal, disciplined, and ready to repel any European force that dares land on her shores. In 1857, such a threat comes. A French-initiated coup attempt organized by a trader and some disaffected nobles is uncovered. The conspirators are executed. Their Malagasy allies are tried and exiled. Ranavalona survives. Again, the eyes in the forest there. is something haunting about her rule. You can picture her standing beneath the canopy of a silk cotton tree, watching dancers perform a sacred ritual, her face expressionless, her mind calculating. Every sound, every movement she notices. She does not speak quickly, but when she does, her words carry weight. Court officials bow deeper, servants leave rooms backward. Nobles pause before speaking. Even the trees seem quieter when she walks. We leave her here still, unshaken, still alone. Behind her, missionaries weep for their lost flocks. Before her, the forest stands silent, protective. In our next section, we'll walk with her through her final years, into the quiet decay of isolation, and the questions that linger beneath her legacy. Silence on the highlands, forests, famine, and final years. The years stretch on. The roads leading into Antananarivo, once trodden by foreign envoys and missionaries, overgrown in places, worn only by soldiers and peasants delivering rice. The gates do not open as often. The port towns feel distant. Trade ships now bypass the island entirely, and in the royal palace, Queen Ranavalona remains. She has ruled for decades. Her face is deeply lined, her once black hair now silvered, but her voice, when she chooses to use, it is still steady, her eyes still sharp, and her belief in her purpose unshaken. A kingdom withdrawn by the 1860s. The world has moved on. STEAMSHIPS. Patrol the Indian Ocean. The British have colonized India. The French fly tricolour flags over northern Africa. The globe is shrinking under the weight of empire. But Madagascar remains ... separate. Ranavalona has preserved its sovereignty. Yes, but at a cost. Trade is nearly non-existent. Technologies like railways, modern medicine, and communication are kept out. Internal commerce stalls. Famine becomes common in the countryside. Insects eat what droughts don't claim. The Queen's officials continue to collect taxes, but there is less to give. The people begin to murmur not in revolt, but in resignation, and still. Ranavalona rules. The court in shadow within the palace walls. Intrigue continues. The Queen is no longer active in daily politics, but she is, never unaware. Her son, Rakoto, has begun to advocate for reform. He writes secretly to the French, suggesting that his mother's policies have isolated the nation. He proposes ... change. But change does not come quickly in Ranavalona's court. The nobles who support her are old, loyal to custom. They remember a time when the ancestors were near and foreign shoes did not muddy the temples. The palace becomes a strange place, caught between two worlds, one foot in tradition, the other resisting the inevitable tide. The Queen's quiet declinarant grows quieter in her last years. She attends fewer ceremonies. She rarely leaves the palace complex. Her meals are small rice greens and slow-boiled meats. She walks her gardens slowly, stopping to observe small birds in the bushes. She listens to music played on the valihar, a bamboo harp. Its gentle plucking seems to soothe her. She reads reports, signs edicts, but she sleeps more and speaks less. Some days, she asks for the ancestral prayers to be repeated again and again till dusk settles into the red earth. Death of a sovereign, August 16th, 1861. After 33 years on the throne, Queen Ranavalona dies. There is no great outcry, but there is a hush, a kind of collective pause. People in the hills light lamps of oil. In the city, Traders bow their heads. The soldiers in their red tunics stand still for hours, unsure whether they feel grief or relief. She is buried in the royal tomb at Himanga, the sacred city of the highlands, but her body will not rest. There forever, years later, in colonial times, the tomb will be desecrated by French forces, her remains lost, scattered. Even in death, Ranavalona will not be left alone. A legacy in layers. So how do we remember her? European records called her the Mad Queen of Madagascar, the female Caligula, the tyrant of the South Seas. But history, like the forests of her homeland, is more complicated than it first appears. She preserved her nation's independence. She kept foreign armies at bay. She protected traditions that would have been erased by missionaries and merchants alike, and yes, she did so with laws that brought fear, with trials that killed thousands, with policies that turned the world away. But unlike so many others in her time, Ranavalona ruled her way, not as a servant, not as a puppet, as a queen, a final stillness. And now the palace is quiet again. The wind rustles through dry grasses. Somewhere in the forest, a lemur calls, then falls silent. The roads remain, the stones she walked on remain, and the question lingers, ... Was she cruel, or was she the only one willing to stand alone? Let's now wander into a different time, a different place. Story 5. Caliph al-Hakim, the moonlit madness of Cairo. And now we drift to North Africa, ... to the winding streets of Fatimid Cairo, where stone courtyards gleam beneath moonlight, and scholars debate softly under lamplit arches. A strange ruler walks alone at night, barefoot, veiled, and followed by no one but the stars. This is the story of Al-Hakim by Amr Allah, the caliph they called mad, holy, or perhaps ... both, the child, caliph, and the hall of lanterns. The air in Cairo is soft in the evening. It carries the scent of crushed mint and warm brick. The streets are narrow, lined with workshops and windows filled with brass lamps. In the palace of the Fatimid Caliphate, the candles burn late. A boy walks among them, trailing his fingers along walls of carved cedar. He is quiet, precise, watching, listening. His name is Al-Hakim. He is 11 years old, and he is now the ruler of one of the most powerful kingdoms in the Islamic world. A dynasty of Lighted is the year 996. The Fatimid dynasty, descended from the Prophet's daughter, Fatima, rules over North Africa and parts of the Mediterranean. They have made Cairo a jewel of learning and architecture. Its libraries hold thousands of texts. Its mosques hum with scholars and calligraphers. The city itself is a kind of whispered promise that religion, science, and power might coexist in peace, but peace does not last. Al-Hakim's father, Caliph Al-Aziz, has died. And so, at an age when most boys are still studying their letters, Al-Hakim ascends to the throne. At first, the viziers rule in his name. They balance the demands of different sects, merchants, generals. They light candles for guidance, but the boy watches everything. A boy surrounded by shadows, he grows up in a palace full of conflicting forces. Some advisors want him to be a tolerant ruler, like his father. Others whisper of purifying the court, of stamping out heresies, of reshaping the caliphate according to their vision. At night, Al-Hakim reads not just the Quran, but also astrology, medicine, and esoteric writings. He walks through the gardens, alone, sometimes whispering to himself by his matines. He begins to assert control, and the city begins to change. An eye for the unseen Hakim becomes known for his strange habits. He rides through Cairo at night alone, without guards. He stops to listen to beggars, leaves coins beside sleeping paupers. Sometimes he visits mosques incognito, standing silently in the back. He creates a hall of mirrors and lanterns in the palace, where he studies the movement of the moon. He begins to record his dreams. His subjects are fascinated and increasingly ... afraid, because soon these dreams become law. We leave him now, seated beneath a glowing dome, scribbling notes in the hush of midnight. In our next section, we'll explore the decrees that bewildered his court and the patterns of rule that danced between genius and terror. Decrees beneath the stars, the lamps flicker in Cairo's narrow alleys. Soft yellow light spills onto the worn stones, while the Nile glimmers nearby like a ribbon of ink. Somewhere in the palace, a parchment is unrolled. Another decree, another rule, written in careful script. No celebration, no proclamation, just a new law sent quietly into the streets. The people blink at it by candlelight, bewildered their caliphal, Hakim Bioma Ali is governing from the shadows, and the rules are changing, constantly. Proclamations that confuse Il Hakim begins to issue orders that make little sense, even to his ministers. 1 month, he bans the making of women's shoes. The next, he forbids certain vegetables in markets, melons, then grapes. Then he reverses the decision. He bans chess, music, singing, then lifts the bans, only to reinstate them days later. Once, he forbids shoemakers from crafting footwear for women, altogether claiming it encourages vanity and wandering. Then he bans tailors from sewing certain styles of sleeves. Then he redefines public modesty. Again, these are not just oddities, they become law. And when laws change by the light of the moon, uncertainty grows like mold. A kingdom that must stay indoors at one point. He forbids women from appearing in public entirely. Not just from traveling, he bans them even from leaning out of windows or rooftops. The city adjusts. Wooden screens go up. Doorways are sealed. Public fountains, once meeting places, go quiet. It's not enforced with silence, with expectation. One by one, the women of Cairo disappear from public life, and all the while, Al-Hakim continues his night rides alone on a grey mule, listening to the hush he has created. Enforcing the moon's will, his guards, called the Begin, enforcing the decrees with eerie precision. They confiscate mirrors, they close bathhouses, they ask questions about clothing, about prayers, about dreams. One order forbids the baking of certain sweets. Another bans the buying of fish on certain days. A third criminalizes the sale of raisins temporarily. Even dogs are targeted at one point. Al-Hakim declares the howling of dogs disruptive to spiritual contemplation. His agents roam the streets, silencing them. The nights grow quieter, too quiet. Too quiet, the curious faith of Al-Hakim Despotor. Perhaps because of his odd laws, Al-Hakim is deeply religious, or rather, spiritual in a way that defies categories. He studies the heavens and insists that the stars hold divine secrets. He gives large endowments to scholars, but also burns certain texts. He protects some Christian and Jewish communities, even as he destroys others. In 1009, he orders the destruction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, one of the most sacred Christian sites in the world. The shock ripples far beyond Egypt. Some call him a fanatic. Others say he was swayed by bad dreams. He does not explain himself. The night, Rular al-Hakim becomes increasingly nocturnal. His court adjusts. Councils are held by moonlight. Ministers wait in dimly lit rooms for the caliph to emerge. He strolls the palace gardens with astrologers and mystics. At times, he claims visions of ancient prophets, of jinn, of his own future. Some say he never sleeps. Others say he talks to the stars and expects them to answer. And perhaps they do fear with no footsteps. His rule is not a reign of screaming executions. He is not a butcher. His terror is subtler. He disappears officials quietly. He replaces judges without notice. He imprisons poets. People in Cairo begin to speak in whispers. Out of loyalty, more from a kind of watchful uncertainty. They do not know what tomorrow's decree will bring. And so, they wait. They obey. They sleep with lamps burning low. We leave him now beneath the canopy of stars, whispering to a silver sky, writing rules no one understands. In our final section, we'll follow the caliph to the desert's edge, where history loses his trail and legend begins. Vanishing into the desert, a legacy written in uncertainty. The desert waits outside Cairo, wide and quiet. Beyond the city's edge, the wind moves in soft, curling eddies. The dunes stretch like waves of silk, their crests glowing in moonlight. It is into this stillness that Al-Hakim often rides, alone, bareheaded, clothed in white. His servants do not follow. His guards are dismissed. He disappears for hours, sometimes entire nights. The people say little. By now, they know better than to ask. A final ride-it is February. In the year 10-1, Al-Hakim mounts his mule, as he has done many times before. He departs from the palace near the Muqattam Hills, just beyond the city's eastern boundary. The sky is clear, the moon high. He vanishes into the night, but this time he does not return. What was found and what was not search parties are dispatched. At dawn, they scour the ridges and stony valleys. Days pass, then weeks donkey. Eventually his donkey returns alone. Later, a single item is found near a blood-stained garment, believed to be his. But no body, no explanation, no final decree. The caliph is gone, whispers, theories, and a slow disappearance series ripple through the empire like the hush after a candle is snuffed. Some say he was assassinated, perhaps by his sister, Sit al-Mulk, who quietly assumes power after his disappearance. Others say he staged his death, fed up with court life and eager to escape its golden cage. There are even those who believe he was taken by divine forces, that he was not mad but chosen. The Druze and the Living Imam One group, in particular, refuses to believe he died. The Druze religious movement that had emerged during Al-Hakim's reign declare him a living imam, an incarnation of divine wisdom. They say he went into occultation, kind of sacred hiding. Then he will return one day. They stop calling him Caliph. They begin calling him Al-Hakim al-Montazar, the awaited one. Shrines are built. Prayers are whispered, and though his name disappears from official Fatimid records, it lives on in the hidden folds of devotion. The palace after Cairo continues. New caliphs rise. Mosques are repaired. Bazaars reopen. But something lingers in the stones. Perhaps it is the memory of a ruler who governed by moonlight, or the scent of ink used to draft strange laws no one expected. Or perhaps it is the simple absence of a ruler who once walked among his people in silence, and then did not. His sister rules well. Order returns. And yet, when the night falls, Just so, and the stars hang low above the Mukatam hills. Old men still tell the story of the Caliph who whispered to the heavens, of the man who left without a sound. A soft reflectional Hakim ruled for 25 years. He built mosques, libraries, and law schools. He preserved and destroyed in equal measure. He confused his enemies. He frightened his allies. He governed as if the stars were more real to him than the voices of men. Was he mad, perhaps? Was he divine? To some, he still is. But maybe he was simply alone, a child caliph, grown into a man who mistook solitude for prophecy, or perhaps one who found a kind of peace in being misunderstood. So we leave him now somewhere in the dunes, perhaps still walking. The city sleeps behind us, the desert sighs ahead, and the story, like the man himself, never quite ends. Let's now wander into a different time, a different place,